Chapter 890. On the battlefield, leaving one's horse was a very dangerous thing to do. If he didn't handle it well, he wouldn't know where the blade would come from and end his life. But at this time, in order to fulfill his dream, he couldn't care less. The two enemy riders were getting closer and closer. Huhelu could already see the murderous eyes behind the black cloth. But at this time, Huhelu suddenly jumped into the air. Then he turned around and slashed at the back of the head of the unprepared elite Tatar rider. The pincer attack of the two elite Tatar riders was blocked because of Huhelu's sudden jump. Not only that, but the back of the head of one of the elite Tatar riders was cut. The sharp blade fell, and half of the head was chopped off. Blood flowed out, and the elite Tatar rider fell from his horse. Half of his head fell to the ground. He couldn't be more dead. Finally, he killed another person. Huhelu had completed the mission of killing 3 enemies. Naturally, he was extremely excited in his heart. However, before he could cheer, he had already fallen from midair. Unfortunately, he sprained his ankle, and a heart-wrenching pain drilled into his body from his ankle. With his foot sprained, he could no longer stand. At this time, the elite Tatar riders on the other side had already moved their horses and rushed towards him. On one side was a person who borrowed the momentum of the horse to rush forward. On the other side was an injured soldier who was half kneeling on the ground. The result was self-evident. This scene also deeply attracted the attention of the scouts who were observing the battlefield. They were ordered by Yang Chendong to observe the results of the battle. In order to be able to see everything more clearly, they didn't want to lose any military merit. Hundreds of people had binoculars. Just now, Huhelu's performance was seen by several people. Seeing that the first warrior who killed 3 enemies had finally appeared, they didn't have time to cheer. Seeing that this person was about to be in danger, everyone held their breath and held their breath. Half kneeling on the ground, Huhelu saw the killing move in front of him. He didn't know where he got the strength from, but he suddenly dashed forward and rushed under the warhorse of the elite Tatar cavalry. He then brandished his saber and chopped off the rear hooves of the warhorse. The warhorse that was galloping at high speed also fell to the ground with a plop. The elite Tatar cavalry also fell to the ground together with it. It was a very disgraceful scene of a dog eating feces. After chopping off the warhorse's hind leg, Huhelu did not stop there. Instead, he turned around and crawled forward. In less than 2 breaths, he arrived behind the Tatar elite cavalry that was in a state of confusion. Then, he abruptly plunged his saber down and ended the life of another enemy. After killing 4 people in a row, not only would he be promoted, but he would also be able to bring a family member with him. The excited Huhelu seemed to have regained some strength in his body. He placed his left hand beside his mouth and whistled sharply. The horse in the distance heard the sound and came over. He then jumped onto the horse and turned around to head back to the mercenary base camp. Catch him! Seeing that someone had killed 2 of their companions, the 4 elite Tatar riders showed anger and rushed over. They would never allow such a warrior to escape. It was an insult to them. Shoot! As for Huhelu, he endured the pain coming from his foot and tried his best to rush back. Finally, he was 300 meters away from the mercenary camp. 4 gunshots rang out and hit the feet of the 4 elite Tatar cavalry who wanted to rush over. The 4 gunshots caused the horses to neigh, and also caused the 4 elite Tatar riders to curse. But in the face of thousands of black muzzles, they didn't dare to cross the line. They cursed all the way back. Huhelu rushed out of the King of Hell's palace. A few scouts immediately came forward to lead the horses. The medics who had been waiting for a long time also came forward to check the injuries. Another scout in charge of registration ran to Yang Chendong and saluted. 6th young master, this person killed 4 enemies and returned safely. Oh! In the midst of the silence, cheers suddenly rang out. Finally, someone had passed the test. While everyone was celebrating for him, they were also cheering for themselves. Since one person could do it, there would be a second person who could do it. Good. Yang Chendong patted the back of the chair and stood up. When he noticed that everyone's eyes were focused on him, he took the information in his hand and looked at it. He then announced loudly, Huhelu killed 4 elite Tatar riders on the battlefield. His military service is outstanding, and he is the first soldier of the 1st Cavalry Division. He will be promoted and from now on, he is a member of the Han. At the same time, he has the right to promote a family member. Everyone congratulate him. After speaking, Yang Chendong took the lead and clapped his hands. The applause immediately became continuous. Many excited Mongol soldiers from the Gobi Desert shouted, "Long live the Heavenly Khan! Long live the Heavenly Khan!" Suddenly, the cheers came one after another. Hu Helu, who was supported to stand up, also had tears of excitement in his eyes. He finally achieved his dream. At this moment, he felt that his feet didn't hurt anymore. When the cheers came out, it attracted the attention of the Tatar army. They didn't understand. The other side lost again. What was there to cheer about? Could it be that more of them had escaped from this battle? Looking at the battle report, killing 1,300 enemies and losing 54 cavalry, Tua shook his head. Then he said with certainty, "While there is still time, continue to send people to fight. This Khan wants to see how long they can last." The third battle soon began. Compared to the previous battle, the Mongol soldiers from the Gobi Desert were sent out this time. However, their morale was much higher. This battle lasted until dusk. And in this battle, there were 2 more brave warriors who managed to kill 3 enemies. Yang Chendong also promoted them in front of everyone, and announced that they would join the world's first cavalry division that would be established soon, becoming glorious warriors. 3 battles in a day. The first battle took 4 hours. The second battle took slightly more than 4 hours. The third battle took almost 4 hours. They killed more than 100 enemies and lost more than 3,000 men. Just from this point alone, the mercenaries were the ones who lost. However, for some reason, the mercenaries' morale didn't drop. Instead, it rose. Other than those who had lost the battle and were seriously injured, the others were filled with energy. They wanted to perform well on the battlefield. In the headquarters of the new division, Commander Tiger Mane and Deputy Commander Shibi had just finished patrolling the troops and made arrangements for the night watch. They went back to their tent to wash their faces and prepare to sleep. After wiping his face with a towel, Commander Tiger Mane couldn't help but sigh. He said, "Today's losses are quite big." Hehe. Shibi, who was at the side, chuckled. "What are you laughing at?" Shibi's laughter made Tiger Mane feel a little confused. "Nothing. I just want to ask Commander if you are worried that we can't bear the losses. Also, when it's our new army's turn, will we suffer the same loss?" "That's right. Is this not worth worrying about? You saw it today. The elite Tatar cavalry is indeed fierce. They are very good at horse riding and their individual qualities are also very high. They also know how to cooperate in battle. To be honest, if the same number of troops were to fight them head-on, I'm afraid that other than the heavy cavalry regiment, no other troops would have an advantage. Shouldn't this be worrying?" Facing Tiger Mane's question, Shibi nodded with a serious expression. But then he shook his head. "Commander, don't worry. Although the elite Tatar cavalry is strong, the soldiers of our new division are not to be trifled with. If we really fight, we won't be at a disadvantage by relying on our arrow point formation and the 3x3 formation. Besides, the 6th young master isn't worried. What do we have to worry about? From a certain point of view, this is indeed a way to improve our fighting strength. As long as they are not killed, even if they escape, they will gain a lot of fighting experience. Besides, didn't the 6th young master say that during the meeting at night, those who escape will be given a chance? As long as they have the courage, they will have the chance to fight again in the future. That way, the morale will not drop and the army will be easy to control. There is nothing to worry about." Tiger Mane understood what Shibi said. But what he didn't understand was why they had to fight with the most barbaric and primitive cold weapons when they clearly had guns and cannons. By doing so, they would inevitably lose some strength. Was it really worth it just to train the soldiers? Considering that the 6th young master had said more than once that Shibi was very smart, and most importantly, he could see the big picture. She could learn a lot by staying with him. Tiger Mane leaned in front of Shibi. "Deputy Commander, have you already seen through the mystery? Come tell me." Looking at Tiger Mane's eager eyes, Shibi didn't dare to hide anything. He nodded and said, "Well, since Commander wants to know, then I will tell you. It's just a casual remark. If I'm wrong, Please don't blame me. No, it's just the two of us here. Just treat it as a casual conversation, and say whatever comes to mind. Tiger Mane waved his hand and sat down opposite Shibi with a smile. He even took the initiative to pour a cup of hot tea for Shibi. Shibi quickly got up and took the teacup. Then he gently put it down. After organizing his words, he said, "Commander, the sixth young master has talked more than once about the art of elite soldiers. In fact, I think it is very necessary. Think about it, if there are too many troops, it might seem very powerful, but the cost is also very high. Especially when we mercenaries are treated so well. The amount of money we need to spend every day is a large amount. Only the sixth young master has such strong financial resources. If it were other people, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to last a day." Chapter 891. Yes, it's true that we mercenaries can fight, and our morale is the strongest. However, when it comes to treatment, I can't deny that. Tiger's Mane nodded. This was also why he admired Yang Chendong. With money, he would not forget to give his brothers as much benefits as possible. This way, everyone would work harder in battle. This would form a virtuous cycle. Seeing Tiger's Mane nod in agreement, he continued. However, it takes money to feed the army. Even if the sixth young master is rich now, once the scale of the army expands to a certain extent, the pressure will not be small. At this time, the combat power of the army will become the key. How to maintain the combat power of the army without increasing the number of people in the army will become a problem that the leaders have to consider. Yes, go on. Tiger's Mane nodded. He agreed with this point of view. That's why we have this practical training. Think about it. We chose the strongest elite Tatar cavalry this time. If we can even pass their test, then our current army will be a powerful one. Of course, there will definitely be casualties in the process. The sixth young master has already made arrangements for this. Now there are more than 40,000 people in the logistics division. The mercenaries captured more than 20,000 enemies in the Battle of Saihan Mountain. They will be our powerful backing. Once the new army suffers too many casualties, they will come in handy. Those people are reserve soldiers. Their treatment is not as good as the official mercenaries. In order to improve their treatment, they will have to perform well. The soldiers will figure this out themselves. We don't even need to do any work. We just need to watch everything from the sidelines and wait for the sixth young master to create an elite army for us. We can just pick up the ready-made ones. Not to mention, after this battle, it is equivalent to integrating the forces of the Mongolian tribes in the north of the Gobi Desert. Think about it, those who died today are those people. However, no one forced them. Not only that, those small leaders also took the initiative to ask for battle. They were afraid that the sixth young master would not give them a chance. After this battle, what will happen? She smiled and looked at Tiger's Mane. When Tiger's Mane was asked this question, various results flashed through his mind. In the end, he said with certainty. In the end, either the real warriors among these people will join the 1st Cavalry Division, or they will be dead or injured and will not be a threat to us. Yes, that's the result. Without a single blade or spear, with the benefits of good treatment and promotion, the combat power of the Gobi Desert's Mongolian army was destroyed. From now on, the sixth young master will live up to his name. Khan. Commander. Yes. When Tiger's Mane heard this analysis, he excitedly reached out his hand and slammed the table. He then looked at Shibi and said, "No wonder the young master asked me to talk to you more when I'm free. He said that you have a good view of the overall situation. It is true. Deputy Commander, if you see anything in the future, you can teach me. I will work hard to learn from you." "You are too serious, Commander. We can learn from each other," Shibi hurriedly said politely. He would not forget the identity of the person in front of him. Even if he did not know anything and did things very ordinary, with his background as the servant of the sixth young master, he would have a bright future. As smart as Shibi was, he quickly saw through Yang Chendong's intention. Among the small leaders of the Mongolian tribes in the north of the Gobi Desert, there were some smart people. When they calmed down in the middle of the night, they also saw the problem. But what made them helpless was that the current situation was not something they could change. The temptation of becoming the first cavalry division was too great. Even if they wanted to lead the troops away now, they were afraid that none of their brothers would listen to them. Not only would their brothers not agree, but they also wanted to perform well and fight for a future. Speaking of which, they were the small leaders of the tribes, but they were only the leaders of a few hundred or 1,000 people. They were young and had some ability now, so the people in the tribe would listen to them. But what about the day when they grew old? Or what about the day when he was targeted and lost the battle and lost his power? It was hard to say whether they could secure the position of a tribe leader. In contrast, the position of a mercenary was really stable. They had specific and detailed rules. Even if you were old or injured on the battlefield and could no longer fight, you could still enjoy some good treatment. It was impossible to become a king or a tyrant with this, but it was not a problem for you to be content with being a wealthy citizen. Even these small leaders couldn't resist the temptation, let alone the ordinary cavalrymen. Most of them were young, driven, and had dreams. In the past, there was no platform for them to perform. Now that there was a platform for them to perform, who would not work hard and do their best? That night, many people were too excited to sleep. The next morning, after breakfast, the battle began again. Compared to yesterday, the Mongolian soldiers of Mo Bay performed better. Not only did they die less, but they also killed more enemies. In one day they fought 3 battles. Compared to yesterday, only 3 people passed. Today, there were 23 people who passed the test. Among them, 4 of them killed 4 enemies and retreated safely. One by one, Yang Chendong sent the orders to the soldiers who were about to become the world's #1 cavalry division. This scene greatly stimulated everyone. Even the Mongol soldiers who had retreated from the battlefield requested to fight again, wanting to give it their all. Yang Chendong agreed to these people's requests. But he still decided to let everyone go through the first round before thinking about the second round. Otherwise, if all the training was used on the Mongolian soldiers of Mo Bay, the new soldiers would complain and say it was unfair. The battle continued. Unexpectedly, it lasted for a month. During that time there were 2 heavy rains and 4 or 5 drizzles. But it did not stop the battle from continuing. At this moment, both the mercenaries and the Tatar army seemed to be exhausted. No one wanted to retreat. Everyone wanted to see who would be the first to give up. Maybe then, the winner would appear. In a month's time, all the warriors who could fight had fought several times. Some of the elite Tatar cavalry had fought more than 7 or 8 times. Their number had increased from 30,000 to 10,000, and many of them were injured. As for the mercenaries, their losses were not small. 30,000 of their 50,000 soldiers were killed or injured. This was because Yuan Heping had set up a hospital near the battlefield to ensure that the injured soldiers could receive good treatment and recover quickly as long as their injuries were not too serious. Of course, after a month, the results were very significant. The prototype of the world's #1 cavalry division had been formed. More than 5,000 people had passed the assessment. The best performance was the Tatar division commander Su He and the old student Tian, who had studied in the Yang family academy. The 2 of them had killed 9 enemies at once. This was a record that no one else could break. Su He could be considered a general. He used to be a member of the Tatar army. He was regarded as one of Agar Dorji's most trusted subordinates. After joining the mercenaries, his performance had been good. He was promoted from a commander to a division commander. He had killed his way through mountains of knives and seas of fire. His achievements were not surprising. Who was Tian Hu? In the past, he was not a well-known figure. It was even said that he had only started to train his equestrian skills recently. It had not even been half a year, but he had created such a record. It was no wonder that people had a whole new level of respect for him. But no one knew that before entering the Yang family academy, Tian Hu had the title of Double Blade King. He was the disciple of the previous generation's Double Blade King. His speed was very fast. No one knew where he put his second blade, and when he would strike. It was not an exaggeration to say that he appeared and disappeared like a ghost. Yang Chendong had once carefully observed how Tian Hu killed his enemies. The speed at which he struck with his saber was extremely fast. Often, when the 2 met, His opponent would not even have time to react before Tian, who had already retracted his saber. When he met someone who was difficult to deal with, Tian, whose second saber would strike at an even more tricky angle. It was precisely because of this speed and strangeness that he finally obtained the result of killing 9 people in one battle. Hence, Tian Hu was also known as the double saber Tian Hu. And this was not his limit. Once his equestrian skills reached a certain level, his ability would continue to improve. Other than these two, there were many other people who performed well. For example, the Tatar Division's 1st Battalion commander, Temur. He killed 6 people in one battle. This tiger general, who had been subdued by Yang Qindong in Narcissus Town, had finally grown up. There was also Fan Yuhai's former confidant, Lu Duo, who had killed 6 elite Tatar cavalrymen in one battle. Lu Duo had followed Fan Yuhai for a long time, and was even used as a trusted aide. In the decisive battle on the battlefield west of the Water Horse River, Fan Yuhai was defeated and captured alive. Because Lu Duo was a talent, Yang Qindong kept him alive. This person had once thought of avenging Fan Yuhai, but when he truly integrated into the mercenary camp, and was guided by Yang Qindong several times, his mentality underwent a huge change. After seeing the difference between his former master and the one he was about to serve, his heroic spirit was stimulated. With such a wise master, he always felt that if he could not make a name for himself, then he would be letting down his good skills. He immediately signed up to join the battle against the elite Tatar cavalry. Chapter 892. No matter what, Lu Duo was a captive general, not even a surrendered general. Whether he had the qualifications or not was finally reported to Yang Qindong. What was unexpected was that the 6th young master did not even think about it, and directly approved it. In his words, Lu Duo was not a bad person, but he was affected by Fan Yuhai, which delayed his future. This kind of talent was naturally welcomed in the mercenary army. When these words reached Lu Duo's ears, he first burst into tears. Then he took off his old battle suit and changed into the new military uniform that Yang Qindong had sent someone to deliver. He was using this method to formally bid farewell to his past. After that, he joined the battle with enthusiasm and hot-bloodedness. Not bad. He relied on his extraordinary combat strength to obtain the achievement of killing 6 enemies, becoming one of the most outstanding people. Other than that, most of the time he killed 5 or 4 people, and most of the time he killed 3 people. The elite Tatar cavalry was indeed the elite Tatar cavalry. Their fighting strength was valiant, and their individual qualities were strong. Even in a chaotic battle, they could maintain a good formation. If it was a one-on-one battle, even 50 to 60,000 Mongol soldiers would not be their opponent. It was even possible that the result would be a great defeat. More than 5,000 elites had been completely picked out. The rest were either injured or not strong enough. In this kind of situation, it was difficult to pick out any more elites. When all the information was placed in front of Yang Qindong, he first took a deep breath, then slowly closed his eyes and leaned back on the chair. At the same time, his right finger gently tapped on the armrest of the chair. Seeing this, Yang Lu hurriedly retreated. Those who knew Yang Qindong knew that whenever he did this, it was when he was thinking about something important. In the main tent of the Tatar army, after a month, Tua Tuo's face was no longer as arrogant as before. The aura of disdain on his body was also restrained. Although he had won every single one of the 100 battles he had fought, the lack of military strength was finally showing. He wasn't like Yang Qindong, who had 20,000 allies from the Mongol tribes, and didn't have a logistics division with 40,000 troops as backup. He only had 30,000 elite cavalry, and after a month of fighting, he was starting to show signs of exhaustion. The remaining 10,000 elite cavalry were no longer as valiant as before due to the continuous battles over the past few days. Most of them were injured, and they could not even use 70% of their original strength. If this continued, it would not be long before they were completely annihilated. Although he did not want to admit it, it was the truth. It was not something that would not exist just because he did not want to admit it. Thinking about how he had come with great ambition and had lost so many soldiers, he looked coldly at Meng Ku and Hubo, and said, "You two tell me, are we going to continue fighting? We can't. If we continue like this, We're going to lose everything. These mercenaries are just using us as whetstones to train their troops. Hubo was waiting for Tuo's words to finish as she spoke with a tearful tone. At the start, they had not seen through the intentions of the mercenaries. They had only thought that if they continued like this, the mercenaries would not have enough manpower. Even if they had reinforcements, after losing so many battles, their morale would be at an all-time low. As such, it was time for them to retaliate. Once an army lost their morale, even if they had advanced weapons like guns and cannons, they would not be able to display their full strength. As such, not only would they be able to defeat the mercenaries, but they would also be able to use these weapons for themselves. If that was the case, the Tatar cavalry would be able to quickly regain their former glory. This was also the reason why they continued to play along with Yang Chendong even though they knew that such a battle wasn't suitable for the 30,000 elite cavalry, who were used to charging with the whole army. However, later on they discovered that some of the mercenaries were people that they had fought before, and these people would kill them whenever they had the chance. When the situation turned bad, they would retreat. Only then did they realize that these people were just using them as practice. In the later stages of the battle, they could even see some of the mercenaries holding swords and shields, and they looked quite decent. They were clearly imitating them. Reality proved that these people were not only doing this, but the results were also quite good. In the past, they could kill 1,500 enemies in a single battle. At the very least, they could kill 1223 enemies. But now they could only kill a few hundred enemies in a single battle. Sometimes they could only kill 200 or 300 enemies. Then they would turn around and retreat. However, they would have to pay the price of over 100 people. The enemy was constantly getting stronger, while they were exhausted and did not have enough soldiers to exchange. Their battle strength was decreasing. Under this situation, they no longer had the upper hand. If they continued to fight, it would not be long before they would be the ones running away. Hubo no longer wanted to fight, and instead advocated for a retreat. Even Monk, who had always been fond of fighting, did not say anything. However, he did not take the initiative to fight, which made his decision clear. Seeing that his two subordinates did not want to continue fighting, Tuobuhua could only sigh and say, "Then let's retreat. Let's do it this way. Let everyone pack up. We'll retreat in the middle of the night." This Yang Chendong is too cunning. If he finds out that we're retreating, I don't know what he'll do. Hubo had fought with Yang Chendong more than once, so she had some understanding of him. After hearing these words, she immediately nodded. Yes, the Great Khan is right. This person is extremely cunning. Even if we want to retreat, we cannot let them see it. Actually, the main reason he had summoned the two generals was to discuss the matter of retreating. He had suddenly decided to retreat tonight, so that the news would not spread and the mercenaries would not have time to prepare. The two generals walked out of the Great Khan's tent and gave the order to prepare for the retreat. In addition to the 10,000 ordinary cavalry that had not been used, there were 20,000 men. There were also many injured elite cavalry, so they had to make preparations before retreating, such as packing their belongings. As soon as they moved, Su Yunsheng, who had been in charge of monitoring them, immediately noticed this abnormality. As the head of Yang Chendong's reconnaissance group, Su Yunsheng was also a veteran. The sixth young master had once talked to him and asked if he was willing to become a division commander in the new army. This was a clear sign of concern. In the end, Su Yunsheng had refused. He liked being a scout, as it allowed him to observe the enemy at close range without being discovered. Sometimes, a piece of timely information was better than an entire army, and he enjoyed the feeling of being able to predict the enemy's movements. It was a pity that with the current scale of the Scout Corps, being promoted to a regiment was already the limit. If they wanted to be promoted to a division, it would take a long time. Fortunately, Su Yunsheng was willing to endure hardship. In order to complete his mission as a scout, he did not even participate in the selection for the 1st Cavalry Division. Not only him, but many of the corps members of the Scout Corps were also not allowed to participate. Of course, Su Yunsheng was not the only one who did this. In fact, Tiger's Mane and Shibi had already started work on this long ago, allowing the corps members of the 1st Army to remain in the army. After all, The 1st Cavalry Division had to be built, but the construction of the other armies could not be abandoned. Because he loved being a scout, Su Yunqing chose to rest during the day. When everyone stopped fighting, he came out and took the initiative to go to the front lines. Relying on his excellent camouflage and the advanced night vision telescope in his hands, he came every night to observe the Tatar camp from a distance of a few hundred meters. Yang Chendong had once said that if this kind of war of attrition continued, the first to be unable to bear it would be Tua. Therefore, keeping a close eye on them to prevent them from suddenly escaping became the most important task in Su Yunqing's eyes these days. After waiting for a full month, this result had finally arrived. Seeing that the Tatar camp had become somewhat chaotic, and that some injured soldiers had even been carried out of the tents and sent to the carriages ahead of time, Su Yunqing knew that the result that the 6th young master had long predicted had occurred. The enemy was preparing to retreat, leaving behind the other scouts to continue observing the situation. Su Yunqing turned around and rode back to the mercenaries' main tent. He reported the situation to Yang Chendong. After suddenly hearing Su Yunqing's report, Yang Chendong immediately had his servant Yang Lu gather all the generals. The time for an all-out counterattack had arrived. After receiving the order, the generals quickly came to the main tent. Compared to a month ago, the number of officers that came this time was much less. First of all, the small leaders of the Mongol tribes had disappeared. They had either passed the test and joined the 1st Cavalry Division, or they had been sent back to their tribes with heavy injuries, or they had simply lost their lives on the battlefield. In short, after this battle, the military strength of the Mongol tribes had become extremely weak, and they were no longer a threat to the mercenaries. The generals came and stood in front of Yang Chendong in 2 cases. Orders were also issued from the mouth of the 6th young master. The scouts at the front lines have sent news that the Tatar army is preparing to escape. Finally, it is time for us to launch an all-out counterattack. I believe that everyone must have been holding back in their hearts. And now is the time for everyone to release and vent. Now I order the Ferocious Tiger Regiment, Heavy Cavalry Regiment, and the 1st Cavalry Division will form a joint force and charge forward. We must break through the enemy's camp in one blow. The Light Cavalry Regiment and the Scouts Regiment will follow closely to the left and right of the army, and protect the flanks while holding back the enemy. There are still 20,000 enemies left, and we must think of a way to destroy them. At the very least, we must destroy their main force. From now on, there will be no more Tatar tribes on the grasslands. Does everyone have the confidence? Yang Chendong looked at the generals and asked with a resolute expression. Chapter 893. Yes. All the generals straightened their chests, their eyes shining brightly. Very good. After this battle, we will be invincible in this region. I want to use this battle to fight for a few years of peace. Also, the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division will be chosen through this battle. Suhi, Tianhu, you two have to work hard. Yang Chendong's voice was loud and clear as he made the final mobilization before the battle. The meeting ended very quickly, and the officers returned to their respective units and began to assemble. The final attack against the Mongol Tatar tribe would be launched in 2 hours. Tua Buhua had just transported over 2,000 wounded soldiers out when a scout came to report that the mercenaries seemed to have made some movements. They were gathering their troops, and it seemed like they had already discovered their intentions. That's really fast. When Tua Buhua heard this, his face became very ugly. He knew that a final battle was unavoidable, but he did not expect it to happen at this time. It must be said that this loyal duke really knew how to pick a time. Give the order. 10,000 cavalry will stay behind to block the enemy. No matter what, they must hold on for 3 hours. When the sun rises, they can retreat. The other 8,000 cavalry will retreat with me. As long as we are here, the Tatar tribe will not fall. Tua Buhua immediately made a decision, and his determination to retreat did not waver. As long as he retreated this time, with the strength of his family, he would one day rise again. At that time, he would definitely take revenge for today's enmity. Although the 10,000 ordinary Tatar cavalry did not want to retreat, they did not have any other choice. The matter was temporarily settled like this. Those who should retreat retreated, and those who should prepare prepared. It must be said that this arrangement was not wrong, but Tuatuabuhua had overestimated the 10,000 cavalry he had left behind. He had also underestimated the strength of the enemy. This time, Yang Chendong had sent out all the elite troops. Whether it was the ferocious Tiger Regiment, the Heavy Cavalry Regiment, or the newly formed 1st Cavalry Division, they all had extraordinary fighting strength. One cavalry could even be used as a few people. In the face of such a powerful force, not to mention 10,000 ordinary Tatar cavalry, even 10,000 elite Tatar cavalry would not be able to stop them. When the three main forces of the mercenaries appeared in front of the Tatar army, they were like a tornado. First, there was the sound of gunfire, riddling the formation of the Tatar cavalry with holes. Then the Heavy Cavalry Regiment appeared. They used their 3-meter-long broadswords to sweep through the army, taking away the heads of many enemy cavalry. The last to appear was the world's 1st Cavalry Division. When the 1st Cavalry Division appeared, they fully demonstrated what it meant to be unstoppable and unstoppable. Wherever they passed, the only sounds that could be heard were the howls of the Tatar cavalry, and the sounds of weapons being thrown to the ground in surrender. There was nothing to be done. After a month of grinding with the world's strongest cavalry, all the members here were the most elite cavalry. Their fighting strength was extraordinary, and their strength was terrifying. They were even stronger than the previous Tatar cavalry. How could these ordinary cavalry stop them? The 10,000 enemy cavalry that was supposed to resist for 6 hours and hold out until dawn did not even last for 2 hours. The Tatar cavalry was completely defeated. They were either killed in battle or taken captive. The three armies did not have the slightest intention of stopping for the kneeling Tatar cavalry. They continued to rush forward, leaving them for the new army to clean up the battlefield. What they needed to do was to catch up with Tuatuabuhua and leave his life on this grassland. When the news of the 10,000 cavalry being defeated reached the ears of Tuatuabuhua, who was retreating, he actually thought that he was hallucinating. In the past, he had won every time with 2,000 against 2,000. Now that he had sent 10,000 cavalry, how could they be defeated so quickly? Although ordinary cavalry could not compare to elite cavalry, even if there were 10,000 pigs, they would not be able to catch all of them in 2 hours. The situation was very dangerous. Once the mercenaries caught up to them, they would be no match for them with their low morale. It was not impossible for them to be completely wiped out. Tuatuabuhua's gaze fell on Hubo, and Monk. Great Khan, I'll stay behind. As for you guys, run as far as you can. If you really can't, don't care about the injured soldiers. Just leave them here to fend for themselves. I only hope that the Great Khan will be safe. There is still hope for our tribe. Hubo knew that there was no time and made the decision to die to stop the enemy. He had lost many battles in the past, but the Great Khan did not punish him. Just because of this, he would repay the Great Khan with his life. Tuatuabuhua was a person of great importance and knew that this was not the time to be pretentious. He reached out and patted Huboer's shoulder. Okay, you take care too. I'll leave you 5,000 elite cavalry. No matter what, you have to stop the enemy. Great Khan, 5,000 is too much. Just leave 2,000 for me. Hubo still wanted to decline. He was very clear that there were only 8,000 elite cavalry left. If he left 5,000 to himself, the Khan's forces would be too weak. If they encountered any danger, they would not even have the ability to protect themselves. No, 5,000 elite cavalry is not much at all. The enemy was able to break through a 10,000 cavalry formation so quickly. They must be very strong. If we leave too few people behind, we will not be able to stop them. Alright, it's settled then. Remember, hold on until daybreak and think of a way to survive. As long as you survive, we'll be able to meet again one day. Tuatuabuhua pressed down on Huboer's shoulder and said in a low voice, Yes, Great Khan. Huboer nodded in the end. He knew that this was the most feasible plan. Following this, the 8,000 elite cavalry split into two groups. Tuatuabuhua listened to Huboer's suggestion and left 2,000 injured soldiers behind. He only brought 3,000 elite cavalry with him under the protection of General Monk. Hubo had a grim expression as he said to the other 5,000 elite cavalry, "It's time to show our loyalty to the Great Khan. No matter what, we have to hold on until dawn. We have to give the Great Khan and his injured comrades enough time to leave. Kill, kill, kill." The 5,000 elite cavalry seemed to know that this might be the last battle of their lives. They raised their scimitars and shields as they shouted. About a quarter of an hour later, the three main forces of the mercenaries appeared. Hu Bao didn't say anything and immediately charged forward. He knew how powerful the guns and cannons of the mercenaries were. If the 5,000 of them were to face these guns, they wouldn't be able to do anything. But if they were to charge into the enemy's camp, then the situation would be completely different. They would be able to restrict the enemy's movements. In truth, it was not that Xiaofeng's ferocious tiger regiment did not want to fire. It was just that the Wind Chaser regiment, Su He and Tian, who did not give them a chance to fire. They knew that this was the elite cavalry of the Tatar Empire. They wanted to win fair and square, and not rely on external forces. Just like that, an extremely intense battle began. Very quickly, the two sides began to fight. In the night, saber against saber, saber against saber, saber against shield, the sound of which rose and fell, lingering in one's ears. The soldiers of the 1st Cavalry Division who had been through life and death situations were all elites. They were all soldiers who had killed at least 3 elite cavalrymen on the battlefield. Now that the enemy no longer had the advantage, and was only fighting one-on-one, they had the advantage from the start of the battle. They slaughtered their opponents until they were thrown off their horses. This was a testament to their strength and the might of the 1st Cavalry Division. Su He and Tian, who chose to charge forward continuously. One was brave and fierce, while the other was sharp with his scimitars. Wherever they went, one elite Tatar horseman after another was cut down from their horses, as if they were chopping melons and vegetables. In one breath, they had killed at least 5 or 6 people. Su He and Tian, who had unknowingly gathered together. After the two of them looked at each other, Su He opened his mouth and said, "These elite cavalrymen have good foundations. It would be a pity to kill them all. Why don't we have a competition to see who can capture more?" "Sure," Tianhu said, keeping his words to himself. In the past, when he was in the Yang Academy, he was a taciturn person. Unless he asked someone a question or someone asked him a question, he would not say a word. At some point, the news that the two generals had stopped killing and had started to compete to capture captives had spread. The first to stop attacking was the fierce Tiger Regiment. They set up a defense around the battlefield to prevent the enemy from escaping. Then they raised their torches to light up the area. They wanted to witness this historic moment. Next, the Heavy Cavalry Regiment also stopped attacking. They also raised their torches to light up the battlefield. They wanted to see who would become the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division. Only 5,000 soldiers of the 1st Cavalry Division remained. They had also been influenced by the two generals. They stopped killing and started to capture captives alive. After a round of fighting, only 2,000 of Hu Bo's 5,000 elite cavalrymen were left. They were already prepared to fight to the death, but when they saw that the other party had suddenly stopped and changed from a murderous aura to wanting to capture them, they were all infuriated. A soldier could be killed, but not humiliated. This kind of action was looking down on them, and completely infuriated them. Under the lead of Hu Bo, the 2,000 elite cavalrymen began to counterattack again and again. They were inferior, so what if they had a lot of blood? Facing the cavalry of the 1st Cavalry Division, who were even stronger than them. Even though they attacked like crazy, the results were not good. Not only were they unable to do anything to their opponents, but they also expended their energy faster. In the end, most of them were captured. Only Hu Bo, and less than 20 cavalrymen were left. On the side of the mercenaries, only Su He and Tian who were left. Chapter 894. If it was in the past, it would have been impossible for the two of them to defeat 20 Tatar cavalrymen. But now the 21 cavalrymen, including Hu Bo, had expended a great deal of energy and were panting heavily. They had turned the impossible into possible. "Let's settle this once and for all." Su He glanced at Tianhu, his voice carrying a clear challenge. "Okay. Tian, who was still a man of few words, after he finished speaking, he suddenly rushed forward and chopped at the head of one of the elite Tatar cavalrymen, forcing the cavalryman to raise his blade to block. Using this opportunity, he slashed out with his second blade. The back of the blade smashed into the cavalryman's back. With a heavy blow, the cavalryman's mouth spilled out and he fell from his horse, heavily injured. In one round they captured another man. Below them, some warriors had already run over and tied up the injured Tatar rider who had fallen off his horse. When Suhi saw this scene, he couldn't help but praise in his heart. Although this Tian, who didn't like to talk much and gave people the impression that he was very boring, his skills were truly impressive. Although they hadn't fought before, Suhi had a feeling that if they fought one-on-one, he would be the one to lose. Since Tian who had moved, Suhi didn't hold back either. He galloped towards the nearest cavalryman, and used the momentum of his horse to slash out with his blade, colliding with the cavalryman's strength. When the first attack failed, he followed it up with another attack and another attack at the same location. The 3 attacks all landed on the cavalryman's scimitar. The powerful force made it so that the cavalryman couldn't hold his blade. The scimitar fell, and Suhi's blade came down again, hitting the cavalryman's chest and knocking him off his horse. Although they were both captured, Tian, who only used 1 round and 2 blades, Suhi had indeed used 3 rounds and slashed out 4 times. Just from this point alone, it was clear that the 2 were stronger. The 2 didn't stop attacking. Every now and then, a Tatar cavalryman would fall from his horse. They were really too tired, and the ones that came were 2 battle generals with great strength. They barely managed to block a few moves before falling off their horses and becoming captives. In just 15 minutes, only 3 people were left: Suhi, Tianhu, and Hu Bei. Hu Bo hadn't participated in the battle just now. Firstly, he disdained to attack together with others, and secondly, he needed time to recover his strength. Right now, it was a 1 versus 2 situation, and there were no other companions by his side. With a howl, Hu Bo unleashed a ferocious attack. With a curved blade and a round shield, he was able to fight 1 versus 2, resulting in a stalemate. Although Hu Bo had lost to Yang Chendong several times in a row in terms of commanding, this did not prove that there was a problem with his intelligence. Who hadn't lost in front of Yang Chendong, who had truly won before? If Hu Bo was really so useless, why would the Great Khan use him again and again? Not only that, Hu Bo had some talent in commanding, and his individual battle prowess was also extraordinary. He had fought against Suhi and Tian Hu for more than 30 rounds without losing. He was still full of energy, his blade constantly moving as he unleashed ferocious attacks. Suhi and Tian Hu were constantly retreating. Only when the opportunity was right would they take the initiative to attack and find the opponent's weakness. They could see that Hu Bo was just going all out before his death. As long as they could hold on for a while, the opponent would be completely exhausted and lose. Their estimates were not wrong. Although he had rested for a while, his body had not fully recovered. This attack was just his final performance. From the 40th round onwards, his blade speed had clearly decreased. At this moment, Suhi made his move. He continued to exchange blows with Hu Bo, pushing him back step by step. As Hu Bo continued to retreat, he had unknowingly reached Tian Hu's side. Suddenly, a saber slashed towards his ribs, forcing him to put down his shield to defend. At this moment, a second saber appeared. Tian Hu took the opportunity and slashed at the back of Hu Bo's body. The huge force from the saber caused Hu Bo's vision to darken. He fell from his horse and was bound. The battle was finally over. Suhi and Tian Hu looked at each other at this moment, and they burst into laughter. In this battle, the 2 of them were almost equal. In the end, it was still up to the 6th young master to decide who would be the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division. The sky finally brightened. No matter what the reason was, Hu Bo had completed the mission that Great Khan Tuachuo had given her, persevering until the very last moment. In the end, Tua Buhua still managed to escape under the moonlight. The light cavalry and scouts that were sent out did not follow them. They only captured the 2,000 wounded soldiers and brought them back to the main camp. In the main tent, Yang Chendong looked at the generals who were covered in blood and looked a little tired, but they were in good spirits. He was naturally very happy. Although they did not capture Tuatuabuhua, the enemy's 30,000 elite cavalry was defeated. In the end, only 3,000 managed to escape. They were no longer a threat. Moreover, Yang Chendong had a feeling that Tuatuahua was in real danger this time. After dominating the prairie for so long, he had offended a lot of people. Previously, it was because he had strong soldiers in his hands that no one dared to do anything to him. But now there were only 3,000 elite cavalrymen by his side. So it was hard to say. Yang Chendong sat on the chair and first congratulated the generals on their victory. When he heard that they had captured 2,000 wounded soldiers, he was even happier. He ordered, "Immediately send them back to the first city hospital for treatment. Wounded soldiers are good stuff. They have experience fighting on the battlefield, and even died once. They have a deeper understanding of what they should do on the battlefield in the future. Once they recover from their injuries and return to the team, they will definitely be the best of the best." Yes. When the servant Yang Lu heard the order, he immediately nodded and walked out of the tent to make the arrangements. After discussing the battle, Yang Chendong's gaze finally landed on Suhi and Tianhu. He then looked left and right, but did not immediately make a decision. For Yang Chendong, no matter which of the two men was qualified to be the division commander of the world's first cavalry division. However, there was only one position for the division commander. How should he choose? Even he had a headache. As if seeing Yang Chendong's dilemma, Suhi, who was standing below, had a complicated look on his face. Then, his expression became more determined. He stepped out of the group and first gave a standard military salute to Yang Chendong. Then he said, "Sixth young master, I am willing to withdraw from the competition for the position of the 1st Cavalry Division's division commander." Oh, why? Suhi was willing to take the initiative to withdraw. This was really out of Yang Chendong's expectation. However, the 1st Army's commander Tiger's Mane and the deputy commander Shi Bi, who were standing below, let out a long sigh of relief. This was the result of their private efforts for a long time. Sixth young master, Tian, whose strength is very strong. He is very suitable to be the division commander of the 1st Cavalry Division. As for me, the Tatar Division still needs me, Suhi said concisely. Then he looked at Tiger's Mane. The reason why Suhi made such a decision was indeed because Tiger's Mane and Shibi had done a lot of private efforts. In order to keep this Tiger General, the two of them even took the initiative to promise that as long as Tiger's Mane was willing to stay, the Tatar Division could be trained into another 1st Cavalry Division. When the time came, they would give him whatever he wanted. In addition, Yang Chendong was a little embarrassed. In the end, Suhi made such a choice. Looking at Tiger's Mane, he knew that he had to stand up and say a few words. He stepped forward and said, "Young master, this time our new army's cadres have lost too many. Many people participated in the 1st Cavalry Division's selection and joined it. If Suhi leaves, we really don't have a suitable division commander candidate. Young master, please help us." After saying this, Tiger's Mane lowered his head. He had followed Yang Chendong for a long time. He had heard Yang Chendong talk about the overall situation more than once. Now his decision was somewhat narrow-minded. He was speaking from the perspective of the new army. He was afraid that the 6th young master would be angry. From Tiger's Mane's perspective, his way of doing things wasn't wrong. This time's actual combat training had indeed stimulated everyone's enthusiasm. Needless to say, the foreign race's soldiers had used all their strength in order to be promoted to the Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty's soldiers had also worked hard for a hero card. These thoughts were too normal. Even as the commander, Tiger's Mane couldn't stop them. He could only agree to the soldiers' requests. At the same time, he also talked to some of the corps members. There was only one goal. Once they had gotten the benefits and proved themselves, they could go back. Although the world's #1 cavalry division is good, our new army isn't bad either, right? As for the commander's advice, some people listened, while others didn't. After all, everyone had the right to choose their own future. Tiger's Mane only talked to them and didn't order them. Even the 6th young master wanted capable people to join the 1st Cavalry Division. How could he dare to threaten them with orders? As a result, There were indeed quite a few people who passed the battlefield test and returned. However, there were even more people who didn't return. Because the majority of the people who passed the test were officers, the number of officers in the new army rapidly decreased. Suhi was one of the people that Tiger's Mane and the deputy commander were willing to fight for. The truth was just as Suhi said. After he left, there really wasn't a suitable candidate to be the Tatar division's commander in the new army. Servant Yang Chendong naturally told the following things to Yang Chendong. He fully understood the other party's difficulties and turned a blind eye to some of their private actions. Now that Suhi had publicly said that he wanted to return to the new army, he naturally couldn't stop him. All right. Since this is Commander Suhi's own choice, we can't force it. The 1st Cavalry Division's commander will be Tian Hu. He will be conferred the rank of Senior Colonel. According to the previous regulations, the 1st Regiment's commander will be Taimu, the 2nd Regiment's commander will be Lu Duo, and the 3rd Regiment's commander will be Mu, The 3rd Regiment's commander will be left empty until a suitable candidate is found. Finally, I will personally issue the order. What do you think? Commander Tian, do you have any other requests? Chapter 895. Yang Chendong began to set up the framework of the 1st Cavalry Division. After that, the specific work would be completed by Tian Hu and the 2 newly appointed regimental commanders. Tian Hu, who had been called out, knew that he was going to be the 1st commander of the 1st Cavalry Division. Excitement finally appeared on his calm face. He suddenly knelt on the ground and raised his head to look at Yang Chendong. With a very respectful tone he said, "Teacher, this student will definitely live up to your expectations." Most of the people who came from the Yang Chendong Academy were used to calling him Dean. However, there were also some people who performed well and were favored by Yang Chendong. They were specially taken care of and could be called teachers. Tian Hu was one of these people. It was natural for a student to kneel before a teacher. Yang Chendong didn't stop Tian Hu's actions. Instead, he said with a face full of praise, "Tian Hu, I'm handing over these elite cavalry troops to you. What I want is an army that can fight at any time, and win at any time. As long as you can do this, the logistics division will do their best to satisfy your needs. However, there is only one condition. If the combat strength of the troops is not good enough, I will hold you accountable as the commander." Teacher, don't worry. Since you've given this heavy responsibility to this student will definitely live up to your expectations. In the future, the 1st Cavalry Division will not disgrace this name. In the cold weapons battle, it will become the undisputed number 1 in the world. Tian Hu said as if he was making a promise. He wasn't hot-headed. Although he said that the 1st Cavalry Division was the best in the world, it was only in the cold weapons battle. From this, it could be seen that he already had some plans in mind for how to develop and strengthen the troops of the 1st Cavalry Division. Later on, the facts also proved that the 1st Cavalry Division lived up to their name. The 6,000 cavalry troops had indeed become the strongest cavalry on the grasslands. Every time they went out to battle, the news of victory would be sent back. In battle, all the cavalrymen were good at using dual sabers. When they met a strong opponent, they would use one saber and one shield to attack and defend. In the end, as long as they heard their name, there would be no one who would not be afraid. The war with Tuatuabuhua had finally ended, and the world's number 1 cavalry division was officially established. The 1st Division commander was Tian Hu, the 1st Regiment commander was Taimu, the 2nd Regiment commander was Lu Duo, and the 3rd Regiment commander was waiting to be appointed. When the news came out, Lu Duo burst into tears in his own tent. First, it was the captives. Then it was the surrendered soldiers. Then it was the battle to the death. Now, not only had he become the envied regiment commander, he had also become a member of the Han Chinese. From this moment on, he was truly reborn. The past had nothing to do with him anymore. Everything in the future would be a new beginning, and all of this was given to him by Yang Chendong. After crying loudly, Lu Duo walked out of the tent. He suddenly knelt down in the direction of the main tent, representing his excitement, emotions, and firm political determination. At the end of the battle, they brought the captives and put away the tents. The mercenaries returned to the beginning city in a grand and vigorous manner, as if they had come from the outside. There was still a great news waiting for him here, but he was still unaware of it. The army returned to the beginning city. It was already August, and it was the hottest time of the year. The winter in the beginning city was really cold, but it was not without its benefits. At least it was not so hot in the summer. In the young residence, the news of the sixth young master's return had already spread. Immediately there was a big cleaning. Water was splashed everywhere in the courtyard. While cleaning the ground, it also had the effect of cooling down the temperature. When Yang Chendong stepped into the gate, a cool breeze blew on his face. Good. Yang Chendong chuckled, and prepared to go to the inner courtyard. He had not seen the three madams for more than a month, and he missed them very much. However, before he could take a step, the two maids had already bowed and greeted him with a sincere smile on their faces. Hello, sixth young master. The sixth young master has worked hard. Congratulations to the sixth young master. Oh, congratulations to you too, Yang Chendong said indifferently. He thought that everyone was congratulating him because he had won the battle, so he did not care. However, when he walked all the way to the inner courtyard, everyone he met along the way would greet him and congratulate him. This made Yang Chendong feel that something was wrong. He did not know how many battles he had won, but it seemed that these maids did not care so much about it in the past. It wasn't until he arrived at the inner courtyard that he saw the second madam's maid, Xing respectfully escorting a female doctor in a white robe out. His brows furrowed involuntarily and his expression became nervous. He strode forward and said as he walked, Dr. Zhao, why are you here? Teacher. When she saw Yang Chendong walk over, the so-called Dr. Zhao quickly saluted to show her respect. Dr. Zhao's name was Zhao Yanmei. She was also a student of the Yang Family Academy. She was once known as the Two Saints along with Yuan Heping, who was known as the Sacred Hands. However, the former specialized in internal medicine and surgery, while the latter specialized in gynecology and pediatrics. Normally, if the madams were unwell or felt uncomfortable, it would be Zhao Yanmei who came to see them. They were all women and often went in and out of the inner courtyard of the Yang residence, so they were more at ease. Now that Zhao Yanmei was here, it must mean that one of the madams was unwell. It was no wonder that Yang Chendong became so nervous. And why are you here? Is one of the madams unwell? Yang Chendong did not even return the salute, and asked anxiously. Facing the anxious Yang Chendong, Zhao Yanmei was neither anxious nor slow. She even said with a smile, Teacher, this student congratulates you. Congratulations again. What's going on? When Yang Chendong entered the courtyard, he heard these two words the most. At first it was fresh, but now he was a little annoyed. About this, please find out once you enter the inner courtyard. He did not know where Zhao Yanmei's courage came from. She did not tell him immediately, but kept him in suspense. It must be said that she had no choice. Second madam had already told her that some things must be said by herself and not by others. Okay, I will go take a look. Xing lead the way. Yang Chendong's face did not show whether he was angry or happy, but at least he was more stable than before. Zhao Yanmei dared to keep him in suspense, so it should not be a bad thing. Xing happily agreed and led Yang Chendong to the room of the second madam in the inner courtyard. Yang Chendong's footsteps were very fast, causing Xing to quickly fall behind. It wasn't until Yang Chendong entered the small courtyard that he saw Qiao Yin resting under a large tree. Seeing that she was fine, he let out a long sigh of relief. The maids beside the tree were very perceptive. When they saw Yang Chendong appear, they bowed and paid their respects. They ignored the sixth young master, and went in front of second madam. Holding her small hand, they asked with concern, Qiao, I just saw Dr. Zhao leave. What happened? Are you feeling unwell? At this moment, Qiao Yin's face was red. Young master, I did not expect you to return so quickly. I was originally prepared to welcome you at the door with fourth sister and fifth sister. We are husband and wife. There is no need for those complicated formalities. That's right, you still haven't answered me. Where are you feeling unwell? Yang Chendong casually waved his hand. He had never cared much about formalities. It was only because of his high status that he had to pay attention to them. However, in his opinion, when he was with his wife, he should save on formalities. Feeling Yang Chendong's sincere concern, Qiao Yin's face was like a peach blossom. She first lowered her head and then said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, "Young master, I am not sick." "Not sick? Then what is Dr. Zhao doing here?" "It's fine. What is it that you cannot tell the young master? Hurry up and say it." If Zhao Yinmei's expression did not change when he saw her, and even looked a little happy, he would have thought that Qiao Yin was seriously ill. Seeing Yang Chendong so anxious, Qiao Yin knew that she could not hide it any longer. She said in a small voice, "Qiao is really not sick. It's just morning sickness." "Not sick? Morning sickness?" The anxious Yang Chendong was stunned by these words, and stood there in a daze. "Yes, it's morning sickness. Dr. Zhao said that I am pregnant with the young master's child." As Qiao Yin spoke, she gently stroked her stomach that had not changed at all. She looked very happy. "Pregnant with my child?" At this moment, Yang Chendong finally reacted. He stood there in a daze. At this moment, it was as if his mind had gone blank. At this moment, it was as if everything around him did not exist and he was the only person in the world. In his previous life, Yang Chendong did not have a family because of the nature of his work. Naturally, he did not have children of his own. But now someone suddenly told him that he was going to have a child. He was completely unprepared and did not even have the slightest bit of vigilance. He was completely stunned by this news. He was going to have a child? This was the first time in both his previous life and this life. Once upon a time, he had thought about this problem. When he first got together with Hu Yan and the others, he considered that they were still young and his condition was not stable. He had tried his best to suppress it and did not have any plans to have a child. Later on, when his condition got better, Yang Chendong thought about this problem and tried very hard. But for some reason, none of his wives were pregnant. Later on, when the war in various places became tense, he did not think too much about it. He thought that when the situation was completely stable, he would check it out properly. But he did not expect that before he even did that, he was already pregnant. This was enough to prove that there was nothing wrong with him. There was nothing wrong with him. Chapter 896. Young master, what's wrong? Don't scare Qiao. After reporting the good news, Qiao Yin had been waiting for Yang Chendong's reaction. However, she found that the young master stood there like a fool, neither happy nor sad. For a moment, she became anxious. "Young master, I don't know what to do. After all, eldest sister doesn't have a child yet, but I already have one. This really shouldn't be happening. If young master isn't happy, then Qiao, or doesn't want it." As she spoke, Qiao Yin began to cry. She couldn't be blamed for being so agitated. Hu Yan, as the legal wife, didn't have a child yet, but she as a concubine had a child first. This was not allowed in many large clans. In fact, in order to protect the position of the legal wife, whether or not she could keep the child was another matter. The crying Qiao Yin finally woke Yang Chendong from his fantasy. When he saw that Qiao Yin was crying, saying that she was wrong, and talking about Hu Yan, he pulled her into his arms. "My good Qiao, or what are you saying? You have a child, so the other sisters should be happy. How could they be angry? Moreover, they will have children in the future. There's nothing to be jealous about." "Ah, really?" Qiao Yin was, after all, only a maidservant and not a legitimate daughter of a large clan. Therefore, she had only heard of such things and didn't feel that deep of a fear. Now that she heard Yang Chendong say that there was no problem, then there was naturally no problem. She immediately laughed through her tears. Hee, it's true. It's truer than real gold and silver." Yang Chendong hugged Qiao Yin lightly and laughed foolishly. "Oh right, when did this happen? How long has it been?" "The last time the young master married little sister Tuoya. On the second night, didn't you come to my room and little sister Xiangyangzi's room? Dr. Zhao said that the child is still young." Qiao Yin's face was full of happiness when she spoke of this. "Oh, okay. Yang Chendong was so happy that he could only nod his head continuously. When he was looking for the two madams, he had put in a lot of effort because he had found another sister for them. He felt a little guilty in his heart. He didn't expect that his hard work would really bear fruit. Good, very good. It was indeed wonderful. Xiao Yin's pregnancy was not only a joyous occasion for Yang Qindong, but also for all of Yangxia. As the ancients say, there are 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no descendants is the worst. Even the common people thought so, not to mention a large force like the Yang faction. It could be said that whether Yang Qindong had an heir or not was related to the foundation of the country. Yang Qindong was a good person in every way. He also enjoyed supreme power in Yangxia. However, he was criticized for not having an heir. After all, he didn't have a child. If something happened to him, what would happen to such a large system? Where would they go? Fortunately, Yang Qindong was still very young. He was only 24 years old now. They could still wait and see. Otherwise, those old masters would probably consider sending him for a thorough examination. Now that Xiao Yin was pregnant, it was enough to prove that there was nothing wrong with Yang Qindong. This way, everyone's hearts could finally be put down. Yang Qindong returned, and the news of second madam's pregnancy quickly spread. Xiao Yin didn't let them say it before. First, she wanted to give the young master a surprise. Second, she wanted to see sixth master's thoughts. If Yang Qindong cared about Hu Yan's feelings, then she would definitely make the decision to abort the child. Among the madams, Xiao Yin regarded Yang Qindong as more important than her own life. As long as the young master was well, she was happy. As for her own thoughts, it didn't matter. Now that Yang Qindong had returned, it showed that he liked the child very much. The news naturally spread. Immediately, countless telegrams were sent out from Origin City. Countless officials lined up outside the Yang residence, requesting to meet and congratulate them. Beta Persei was the first to rush over. Although he was a servant of the Yang family, when the young master wasn't around, he didn't dare to casually enter the inner courtyard without orders. There were differences between men and women. Perhaps the young master wouldn't say anything, but someone might make a fuss about it. Young master, congratulations. As soon as he entered the courtyard and saw Yang Qindong, Beta Persei knelt down with a plop. At the same time, tears flowed from his eyes. They were tears of excitement and joy. As a person by Yang Qindong's side, he hoped more than anyone that the young master could have children as soon as possible. He had a little master, or even a group of little masters. All right, get up. Why are you crying as a man? Yang Qindong felt Beta Persei's loyalty. He excitedly helped him up and then laughed. The young master will have children in the future. How is it? Are you happy? I'm happy, I'm happy. Beta Persei nodded repeatedly without any pretense. Yang Qindong patted Beta Persei's shoulder and said emotionally, all right, then I'll say something that will make you even happier. Step down from your position as the logistics division head, and hand over the job to Yang Lu. You will continue to be by the young master's side in the future. He was used to working with Beta Persei. Even though Yang Si and Yang Lu did a good job, he still felt that something was missing. All right. Beta Persei nodded vigorously. Although being the logistics division head was impressive, and everyone had to curry favor with him, compared to being able to be by the sixth young master's side, that was all bullshit. Well, go and tell Qiu Vi Daoshao and the others to guard the courtyard gate. Tell those who want to congratulate him to do their jobs well. The young master will be very happy and go do whatever you need to do. By the way, the scale of the guards should also be expanded. Now that we have enough manpower, you can ask the 2 captains to pick the best ones to expand the guards. Yang Qindong thought that the number of guards was only 100. They could handle some small matters, but when it came to major matters, they would still be weak. Therefore, he took advantage of this opportunity to choose a good number of elites during the training. Yes. Beta Persei agreed excitedly. He had been thinking about this matter for a long time, but since the young master did not say anything, he really did not know what to say. Young master, what scale do you think is suitable for the expansion? A guard team of 500 people. The strength of 1,000 people should be enough to ensure the usual safety. By the way, go and discuss with Jiangping. The security of the inner court should also be increased. What exactly is needed and how many people are needed will depend on what she says. Yang Chendong thought of Qiaoyin's pregnancy. This kind of thing would continue to happen in the future. The safety of the madam must also be protected. The number of female soldiers must also be increased. Yang Chendong was about to have a child. The news quickly spread, and the entire first city was bustling with noise and excitement for several days. After that, everything gradually returned to calm. At this moment, a message from the Security Bureau interrupted the peace. Not only that, but the entire logistics division's captive camp was filled with wails and cries. Tuachuohua died. He died on the road of escape. He was ambushed by the Walla's leader, Yeshen. He, along with 3,000 elite cavalry and General Monk, all died in battle. According to witnesses, after Yeshen made a mistake last time, he sent out 30,000 cavalry this time. However, even with 30,000 men fighting against 3,000 men, they still paid a heavy price. More than 10,000 men died in the battle, and the remaining 20,000 men were all injured. In the end, the battle lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, and everyone was exhausted to death. Tuabuhua himself also died in the end. It was said that there were no less than 50 wounds on his body. With the death of Tuachuohua, the Tatar tribe was about to become a part of the history of the grasslands. They went from glory to decline. Although Tuachuohua was dead, his spirit was still there. The captives in the logistics division had always thought that one day, the Great Khan would come back. This way they would have a place to be useful. Now that their hopes were dashed, many of them began to slack off. Some of them even went on a hunger strike, as if they wanted to live and die with the Great Khan. This was especially true for the 2,000 injured and sick people who were sent to the hospital. They wanted to get revenge on Yeshen, and almost caused a scene in the hospital. If the mercenaries did not appear in time, there would be a big problem. Among the captives, there were quite a number of Tatar soldiers. Naturally, the situation would not be small. The officers had no choice but to report the situation to Yang Chendong. Not long after, Beta Persei personally came out and brought Hubo, from the captive camp to the Yang residence. In Yang Chendong's courtyard, in the pavilion in front of the fake mountain, Yang Chendong and Hubo, sat opposite each other. In front of them was a stone table with a steaming hot tea in the middle. Beta Persei and the first guard Captain Chiovi were staring at Hubo, to prevent him from jumping up and attacking. Remove the shackles and shackles. Yang Chendong casually ordered Beta Persei as he demonstrated his skills in the art of tea ceremony. Young master, this person's strength is not ordinary. Beta Persei wanted to remind him of something. However, Yang Chendong said in an unquestionable tone, "What's wrong? Is it because the young master has not moved for a long time that you have no confidence in the young master?" Beta Persei was reminded of the young master's abnormal strength. He walked up and used the key to unlock the shackles, freeing Hubo. Now free of her shackles, Hubo, rubbed her wrists and smiled. This tea was personally brewed by the Duke of Loyalty. It must be delicious. Ah. As he spoke, he picked up a teacup. His originally smiling face suddenly changed. Then, the teacup was shattered, and a sharp piece of porcelain fell into his hand. He quickly slashed it in front of Yang Chendong. Bang! A figure suddenly flew out. Before Beta Persei and Chiovi could react, Hubo's burly figure flew out and crashed into the courtyard, his face covered in dirt. Yang Chendong was still sitting there as before. He held a teacup and slowly tasted the tea. The tea is not bad. Chapter 897. You're courting death. Beta Persei finally reacted. He snorted coldly and walked towards the courtyard. From the looks of it, he wanted to teach Hubo a lesson. Beta Persei, bring Hubo over and let him sit down. You and Chiovi can just watch from afar. Yang Chendong raised his head slightly and ordered in an unquestionable tone. Beta Persei did not dare to disobey. He could only help Chiovi carry Hubo, and place him in front of Yang Chendong. Then the two of them retreated far away and quietly watched everything unfold. Hubo sat down again. His face did not show any signs of defeat. On the contrary, he looked at Yang Chendong curiously and asked, "Your martial arts are very powerful. Speaking of which, this was the first time Hubo or had observed Yang Chendong so closely. Only now did he realize that compared to Tua Tua Buhua, this self-proclaimed heavenly Khan was so young that it was ridiculous. Haha, you want to kill me? Then I'll give you a chance, Yang Chendong said without answering the question. Then, as if he was performing a magic trick, he took out a dagger the length of an arm and placed it on the stone table. Then he signaled to Hu Bo with his eyes. It was as if he was telling Hu Bo that the dagger was here, and that he could take it at any time and attack him at any time. Yang Chendong's calmness and even arrogance made Hu Bo very angry. He was not Yang Chendong's match, but that was only in terms of strategy. In terms of martial arts, he was someone who could fight against Tian Hu and Su He for dozens of rounds. How could he be afraid of Yang Chendong? He was just careless earlier. This time he would not be careless again. Suddenly, he reached out to touch the dagger on the stone table. However, before he could see Yang Chendong's movements clearly, he was sent flying again and landed in the courtyard. Beta Persei and Chiovi appeared, and the two of them once again carried him to the stone table and sat down. They could see that the sixth young master's martial arts had improved again. If he was prepared, even several Hu Bo would not be a match for the young master. He sat down again and did the same thing. He touched his saber again and flew up again. Hu Bo continued to do the same thing. Even when she was beaten to the point of bleeding from the corner of her mouth, she did not stop. Yang Chendong attacked again, and every time before he attacked, he would say a sentence. Tuachuo Buhua, I didn't kill him. The murderer is Yeshen of Walla. It's wrong to seek revenge on me. I defeated you fair and square. You didn't die unjustly. Tuachuo Buhua, on the other hand, died in the encirclement. This Yeshen, who only knows how to pick up the leftovers, is the true villain. You only know how to stop eating and not cooperate with treatment. Don't you want revenge? After being sent flying for the umpteenth time, Hu Bo was once again helped to sit down by Beta Persei and Chiovi. She finally spoke. How can we take revenge? We're just captives now. Who said that you can't take revenge as captives? Haven't you been thinking of avenging your great Khan all this time? Unfortunately, you've found the wrong person. Besides, who said that captives can only be captives for life? As long as you perform well, you can still stand out. Take Su He for example. He's also from your Tatar tribe. Isn't he living a good life now? Also, in the new army, many of them were captured soldiers, right? What are you trying to say? Hu Bo finally stopped, ignoring the dagger in front of him. In fact, he didn't have the strength to swing the dagger anymore. His whole body was in pain as if it was falling apart. I'm saying that I can give you a chance to take revenge. Yang Chendong finally revealed his intentions. You're going to let us go? Hu Bo asked in shock. No. Yang Chendong shook his head. Whether it was Hu Bo or the elite cavalrymen captured from the battlefield, they were all very strong. If he let them go now, once they gathered together and found someone who understood the situation, they would definitely become a threat to him. Yang Chendong would never do such a thing as releasing a tiger back into the mountains. No. Then how can we take revenge? Hu Bo asked with a look that said, Are you kidding me? Join the mercenaries, and you'll have a chance to take revenge. What, do you really think that if I let you go now, you can really destroy Yeshen and his forces? From what I know, Yeshen teamed up with Agadorji to ambush your Tuachuo Buhua Khan, and reaped a lot of benefits from it. He also made a lot of money from trading with Baiming. Now that he has a strong army, do you really think that you can take revenge with this little force? Hu Bo was speechless. Although he was hot-blooded, he knew that courage alone wasn't enough to deal with Yeshen. He also needed strength. And the mercenaries did indeed have that strength. How can I trust you? Hu Bo's thoughts finally returned to reality. When he knew that only the mercenaries could help him, his mentality changed. It's simple. Join the mercenaries and I'll help you destroy Walla's forces and kill Yeshen within 3 years. If you can't do it, you can leave at any time. You can even start a rebellion if you want. Once Yeshen is killed, if you and your companions want to leave, I promise I won't stop you. How about it? I can swear on my honor as the Heaven Khan to the Tingri Heaven. Yang Chendong said with a serious face. For others, swearing to the Tungri heaven was a very important and even sacred thing. However, he didn't think so. He didn't believe in it. Moreover, he wasn't lying. He had to get rid of Yeshen. Seeing that Yang Qindong had sworn on his honor, Hubo had no choice but to believe him. He nodded. All right, I believe you. Very good. It's a pleasure working with you. Now you can convince your companions not to cause any more trouble. Hurry up and recuperate. Don't wait until the war with the Vol tribe starts. Your conditions aren't suitable. If you miss the big battle, you can't blame anyone else. I'll go and convince them. Hubo nodded. If he wanted revenge, he needed to strengthen himself. Now wasn't the time to go on a hunger strike. With Hubo's departure, the disturbance caused by the captives came to an end. However, the war wasn't over yet. Yang Qindong defeated Tuachuobuhua, and Yeshen took the opportunity to deal with this powerful enemy. The Tatar tribe also announced their withdrawal from the Central Plains. The forces they controlled were also divided up. South of Talu, Sambulakwin was occupied by Baiming Xianfu's army chief and commander of the 10,000 department, Shirwanshan. Yeshen also took over Shajing province. At this point, Shirwanshan was Yeshen's neighbor. The mercenaries were only separated by Sambulakwin. They were already quite close. Yang Qindong didn't take the opportunity to take over more cities. His military thinking came from the future. He didn't care about the gains or losses of a city. What he wanted was to eliminate the enemy's strength. It was just like when the main force was gone, after the soldiers died in battle. Wouldn't the original Tatar territory become ownerless? Wouldn't it be easy to occupy it? Notify the 1st Cavalry Division. Have them patrol the area northwest of Saihan Mountain. Tell the other forces that this area belongs to us mercenaries. Anyone who wants to pass by must pay us taxes and follow our rules. Otherwise, we'll kill them all. Yang Qindong finally revealed his fangs and began to take control of the grasslands with First City as the center. The North Desert City was still under construction. Once the construction there was completed, it would form a triangle with the origin city. At that time his power would be stable. Anyone who dared to challenge his position would be treated as an enemy and suffer the wrath of thunder. After the new army went through many rounds of selection, they returned to their original formation. The number of people in the world's 1st Cavalry Division was not full yet. Division Commander Tian Hu and the 2 commanders carefully selected the people one by one. They were determined to create the strongest army in the world just like their names. The construction of North Desert City was still going on in an orderly manner. With Yang Si in charge of the overall situation, everything was going smoothly. After the Battle of Tuachuobuhua, the mercenaries' strong strength shocked all the people who had bad intentions. No one thought of provoking the mercenaries. The situation near First City was unprecedentedly peaceful. Xiaoyin's morning sickness was very serious. She vomited as much as she ate. After Dr. Zhao Yanmei's examination, he said that it was because of the water and soil. It was still too cold here. It was best to go to a place with a relatively mild climate. This was a good thing for Second Madam and her child. In September of 1453 AD, Yang Qindong decided to return to Qiqian City with his 3 wives. After more than a year, Yang Qindong had laid a good foundation on the grassland. From the initial army of only a few thousand people to the current army of close to 60,000. There was nothing before, but now there were 2 big cities and several small towns. Seeing that everything was on the right track, there was no big battle to fight in a short period of time. Considering Xiaoyin's body, Yang Qindong decided to leave and return to Qiqian City. The only thing that Yang Qindong felt a little regretful was that there was no news from Wu Sheng's 3rd Division and the Nuzhen Cavalry Division that he sent to the north. The radio station only sent 2 telegrams at the beginning, saying that everything was going well. After that, there was no news, as if they had all disappeared. Yang Qindong did not believe that with the strength of Wu Sheng and Chen Bo, they would be completely wiped out. Something unknown must have happened. He had also sent scouts, but there was no news. The Siberian area was too big. It was vast but sparsely populated. It was difficult to find a team. The only thing he could do was to keep sending people to inquire about the situation. Other than that, The only thing left was to give his blessings. Chapter 898. Yang Chendong decided to leave, and Tiger's Mane stayed behind under his arrangement. In terms of political affairs, Yu Mian was his deputy, and in terms of military affairs, Shbai was his deputy, so he could rest assured. After leaving Yang Si to build North Desert City, and 6th Yang Chendong to manage the logistics team, Yang Chendong left the first city in mid-September with his 3 wives, Beta Persei, Wang Si and the others, as well as the 2 guards and 3,200 members of the ferocious Tiger Regiment. When he left, Yang Chendong deliberately suppressed the news. He did not want everyone to know that he had left the first city. Although it was destined that he would not be able to hide it for long, as long as he kept it a secret for one more day, he would be able to deter them for one more day. In order to prevent being discovered, the team left the city in the evening and set up camp 20 miles away from the first city. In the big tent, Yang Chendong accompanied the 3 wives to eat, and from time to time, there would be laughter. In the big tent at the side, Beta Persei was also enjoying the joy of eating and chatting with Kikij. Beta Persei and Kikij's marriage was reported to Yang Chendong, and after getting permission, they got married 7 days ago. It also became a grand occasion in the first city at that time. Not only did Tiger's Mane and a group of senior generals go, Tian Hu, the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division, Xiao Feng, the leader of the ferocious Tiger Regiment, Feng Liang, the director of the Security Bureau in the first city, and even Yang Si and the others rushed over from North Desert City to congratulate their boss on his wedding. Most importantly, the witness was powerful. It was actually Yang Chendong himself who personally witnessed their marriage. With this big sign, everyone who was able to participate in this event shared the glory of it. Not to mention, Beta Persei was also very popular. At one point, he had arranged more than 50 tables for the wedding banquet, and this was because those who were not of a high enough rank did not appear. Otherwise, even 100 tables would not be enough. The better news was that Kikij was not marrying Beta Persei as a concubine, but as the first wife. Speaking of this matter, he had to thank his younger brother, Ba Tuesday. It was precisely because of his good performance on the battlefield that he participated in the battle against the Tatar elite cavalry. Not only that, he killed 4 of the enemy's men. Not only that, he was promoted to a higher rank, he also promoted his older sister Kikij. Now, only his mother, Batama, was left. Presumably, as long as she could perform meritorious deeds on the battlefield, there would still be opportunities. This was also the reason why Yang Chendong became the wedding officiator. Under such a lively atmosphere, Beta Persei could not stop smiling that day. 7 days after the wedding, he left the first city with the young master. After asking for instructions, he decided to take Kikij out to see the world. Inside the tent, Kikij did not seem to be in a good mood. Speaking of which, this was the first time she had been so far away from her mother. Although she had just come out, she was already a little homesick. As her husband, Beta Persei was the best choice to enlighten her. "Madam, do you miss your mother? It's okay, your mother is very safe in the first city. Besides, your younger brother is now a company commander in the new army. With him around, your mother won't be lonely. This time, we are going out to see the world. You don't know how prosperous Chichen City is. That place is no different from a holy place in our hearts." Tiger's Mane stretched out his hand and hugged Kikij in his arms, with a comforting expression on his face. Kikij burrowed into the wide and warm embrace, and found a more comfortable position. "I think the first city is very big, it's very good." Ah! In this regard, Beta Persei was speechless. For a person who was used to drifting around the grassland, the first city was indeed very big. Seeing that Beta Persei did not speak and only smiled, Kikij's face showed a trace of caution. "What? Are you starting to despise me? I knew it. My mother also said that when a man gets a woman's body, it's the beginning of dislike. Oh, I'm being wronged, I'm being wronged. How could I be that kind of person?" Beta Persei cried out loudly, then found that Kikij's face was full of smiles. He knew that she was teasing him, so he pretended to be very angry and said, "Well, you dare to lie to me. As punishment, I'm going to carry you to bed now." Don't. It's not completely dark yet, wait a little longer. When it came to this matter, Kikij's face quickly turned red. This man was a bull, a barbarian. She couldn't stand it every time. If it started now, it would be a problem for her to walk tomorrow morning. In order to divert Tiger's Mane's attention, Kikij took the initiative to say, "By the way, little brother did not join the 1st Cavalry Division, but chose to be a company commander in the new army. This won't affect his future, right?" How could it? When it came to serious matters, Beta Persei was indeed a lot more well-behaved. He liked to talk about these things, especially when he saw Kikij looking at him with admiration. The world's 1st Cavalry Division is indeed the most elite army. If it's a cold weapon battle, even Lung Feng might not be a match for it. But because they are all too strong, it's not easy to make a name for oneself there. It's better to go to the new army. Relatively speaking, the conditions for promotion there are much more relaxed. Besides, this is the intention of Tiger's Mane and Shibi. They first found Batu and persuaded him to stay. They also made a lot of promises, so it's impossible for them not to keep their word. They won't lie to Batu, right? You know that little brother is very honest. Kikij was still a little worried. To him, whether it was Tiger's Mane or Shibi, they were both important people. On the other hand, Beta Persei, who was beside him, was too close to him, so he didn't feel anything. They won't. Beta Persei patted his chest and promised. With my face, how could they not treat Batu well? Besides, little brother is not honest at all. He has a lot of ideas when he's in trouble. Ah, who said that little brother is not honest? He's an honest person. A moment ago, she was looking at Beta Persei with admiration, but after hearing what he said, Kikij became unyielding again. Haha, I was wrong. Beta Persei understood the principles taught by the 6th young master. He didn't know how to reason with a woman. When he saw that the situation wasn't right, he immediately surrendered. This caused Kikij to laugh coquettishly. In the main tent a few dozen meters away, Yang Chendong was drinking horse milk wine and eating mutton with the 7th madam. Yang Chendong wasn't very interested in these things, but it was the madam's request. She also said that after leaving here, it would be difficult to eat such authentic food in the future, so he could only accompany her. War God, is 2nd sister asleep? Just like how every madam had their own way of addressing Yang Chendong, Tui was used to addressing Yang Chendong in this way. She's asleep. People who are pregnant always like to sleep, hee. When Xiao Yin was mentioned, Yang Chendong's face was filled with a happy smile. He was someone who was going to be a father, and Xiao Yin was now treated like a national treasure. In the past, there were only 4 maids serving her, but now there were twice as many, and 8 maids were serving her. Not only that, but Yang Chendong also gave her personal maid, Xing, a very high authority. Unless Xiao Yin was willing, no one was allowed to disturb her, not even the madams. This wasn't his intention to drive a wedge between the madams. In the future, he had watched many palace dramas, and there were many matters related to internal strife. Anything could happen. In the face of powerful interests, any kind of friendship could change. Especially when Xiao Yin was pregnant with his first child. It was impossible to say that no one was jealous. In order to prevent any possible man-made accidents, the safest way was to take sufficient measures now. Although it would hurt some people's feelings, once the rules were set, they could slowly get used to it in the future. Of course, all of this was only on the surface. Secretly, Yang Chendong also instructed Jiang Ping to pay special attention to 2nd madam. The newly formed female guards were put to good use. Once they discovered someone with ill intentions, they could directly take them down without asking for permission. With this hidden hand, Yang Chendong's heart could finally relax a lot. War God, when we have a child in the future, will you protect me like how you protect 2nd sister? Tuoya could feel Yang Chendong's nervousness. She could understand this point. Her background as a princess allowed her to understand some things too early. Because of this, she didn't have any intention of blaming Yang Chendong. On the contrary, she was very supportive. Of course you are my wife. Your safety is naturally the most important. Yang Chendong was very casual, but his tone was very firm. That's great. Tuoya nodded contentedly. Oh, by the way, tell me about the other sisters. You know that we're about to meet each other, so we should know in advance what to pay attention to. Otherwise, it won't look good if we make a fool of ourselves. Okay. Yang Chendong really wanted to push the task to fourth madam, Lady Xiang. However, when he thought about how Tuoya had already left her hometown to follow him, if he rejected such a small matter, who knew if she would be sad? On the battlefield, Yang Chendong was the strategist. No matter how strong the enemy was, he wouldn't be afraid. However, in front of the other madams, his general's demeanor had long disappeared. Other than doting, there was only affection left. She waited for Yang Chendong to speak for 2 hours. When it was already late at night, he became careless. Tuoya's face was flushed red under the candlelight. When she thought of what was going to happen next, she said softly, "Call fourth elder sister over. I can't handle it alone." Okay. Seeing that Tuoya had already gotten used to accompanying him with the other sisters, Yang Chendong was very happy. This was also a way to promote the friendship between the sisters. The next morning, the group set off as usual after breakfast. Everyone seemed to be in a good mood. This kind of process where they didn't have to think about fighting and only had to travel slowly was a great way to improve the relationship between everyone. Chapter 899. Su Yinsheng, the head of the reconnaissance team, was the first to set off, leading a company of scouts to scout ahead. With the 6th young master in the team, there was no room for carelessness in terms of safety. Yang Chendong didn't refuse Su Yinsheng, who had resigned from his position as head of the reconnaissance team, and insisted on following him. This person seemed to be born to be a scout. With him around, there would be a better guarantee of safety, and he wouldn't have to worry too much about accidents happening. The team was vast and mighty, and slowly, all the way to the new Orgondouci area. Usually, when transporting supplies, they would often use this road, but the transport team could quickly pass through here in 10 to 20 days. However, Yang Chendong's team took more than a month. This was mainly due to the inconvenience of Qiao Yin's body. If there was a bumpy road in a hurry, who knew what would happen? Although Dr. Zhao Yinmei followed along, it was better to take precautions. In this way, the army stopped and walked until the beginning of October, when they finally arrived at Sea Town. There were already more than 30 ships waiting here. Long Yintian, the acting head of the 1st Division of the 1st Sea Army, was ordered to wait here. When he saw the vast and mighty team coming from afar, he led the team and waited until the convoy approached. When Yang Chendong walked over, accompanied by Beta Persei and the guards, Long Yintian led a group of officers to greet him. Greetings, 6th young master. Long Yintian, acting head of the 1st Division, is waiting here for orders. Haha, good, make the arrangements, everyone get on the ship. Yang Chendong reached out and patted Long Yuntian's shoulder. Facing this familiar person, Yang Chendong smiled with satisfaction. But in the process of patting the shoulder, the expressions of some of the officers of the 1st Division changed, and their bodies tensed up a lot at this moment. Long Yuntian, who was patted on the shoulder, blushed and was very excited. He was stunned for a moment before he remembered something. He hurriedly turned around and continued to introduce, 6th young master, these are the officers of our new regiment. This is our new political commissar, Su Hao. Long Yuntian pointed at another officer who also had the rank of colonel, and introduced him formally. Oh, political commissar Su, hello. This time, Yang Chendong didn't pat his shoulder. Instead, he reached out and shook his hand. To be honest, as the team grew bigger, there were already some people that he wasn't so clear about. For example, Su Hao in front of him was very unfamiliar to him. Su Hao's face was full of excitement. He stretched out his arms and grabbed Yang Chendong's arm, shaking it vigorously. He also subconsciously said some flattering words. 6th young master, this subordinate has admired you for a long time. Today, I finally get to meet you. I'm extremely excited, extremely excited. Haha, do your best. Yang Chendong also responded with a smile. Then, he shook hands with the other officers of the 1st Division one after another. After a round of greetings, the team began to board the ships. Because Yang Chendong's return to Crimson City this time wasn't a public move, There were no large ships arranged to welcome him. Most of the ships weren't very large, but there were always 2 or 3 second-class ships that were 70 to 80 feet long. It was just enough for Yang Chendong and the others to rest on. The largest ship was naturally Yang Chendong's. After the 3 madams and the maids boarded the ship, Beta Persei led the first guard team and boarded the ship. As for the second guard team, they had no choice but to board the other ships. In this regard, Yang Chendong didn't have any doubts. Since this was the 1st Marine Army's unit, it was his unit. No one would dare to harm him. He still had this much confidence. As for the reaction of the other officers when he shook hands with Long Yuntian, with Yang Chendong's keen insight, he naturally noticed it, but he didn't say anything. When it came to the situation of the officers below him, he wouldn't ask too much. However, his safety was at stake this time. Although he knew how to swim and was quite good at it, he knew that he had to be careful. There were a lot of diving equipment and oxygen tanks in the big warehouse. Even if there were any problems at sea, he would have no problem protecting himself. But the 3 madams were still on the ship. For their safety, there were some things that needed to be investigated. Go, arrange for 2 capable men to ask about the situation and relationship of the officers in the 1st Division. Understood. Beta Persei, who received Yang Chendong's order, nodded and found Ba Daojiang and Pengyu. These 2 were veterans of the guard team. There was no problem in terms of loyalty. They were also experienced in the martial arts world. It was reassuring to leave some things to them. After the team boarded the ship, the acting commander, Long Yuntian, immediately ordered the ship to set sail. The fleet then put away the anchor and set sail straight to the south. When they first boarded the ship, everything was so fresh, especially when they looked around. The sea and the sky were the same color. It was very spectacular. This made the 4th madam, Lady Xiang, and the 7th madam, Tuoya, who had never seen the sea before, very excited. But after a long time, the scenery was the same every day. Even the best scenery would have a day when they got tired of it. Yang Chendong had no choice but to play cards with the 3 madams in the ship's lounge. It was a happy and harmonious atmosphere. After a few days of sailing, the ship was finally no longer lonely. They could see other ships in the distance, but because of the distance, they didn't have much contact with each other. When Yang Chendong heard Beta Persei's report, he stood on the bow and looked into the distance with binoculars. He saw the ship with the North Korean flag. Putting down the binoculars, Yang Chendong looked thoughtful and said to Beta Persei, "Go call Long Yuntian here." Soon Long Yuntian appeared, and Yang Chendong's question followed. "The North Korean Navy is not far away. Do they often appear here?" I don't know." Long Yuntian shook his head with an ugly expression. This time, without waiting for Yang Chendong to ask anything, Beta Persei said with dissatisfaction, "You don't know. Have you never made this trip before?" No, this is the first time I've made this trip." "Oh yes, when I pass by here, it seems that there are ships nearby." With a red face, Long Yuntian explained hesitantly. "Okay, you can go down first." Yang Chendong raised his hand and dismissed Long Yuntian. Yang Chendong fell into deep thought as he looked at his departing figure. "Beta Persei, what about the information I asked you to send?" "There's no news yet, but soon. The Navy soldiers here are very principled. It's not so easy to get information. It will take a little time." This time, it was Beta Persei's expression that was unnatural. There's no other way. If the task assigned by the 6th young master was not performed well, anyone would have an ugly expression. There's no hurry. There are still more than 20 days from here to Husung City. It should be enough. It's just that the existence of the North Korean Navy in front of us is a hidden danger. Right now, Beiming doesn't have a navy, so they don't pose any threat to us. However, this is our supply route to Shurchung. If the North Korean Navy decides to attack us one day, then the situation won't be good. Well, take note of this matter, and remind me when we return to Resin City's Marine headquarters." "Yes, young master." Tiger's Mane nodded and agreed. This seems to be a small episode. Yang Chendong didn't care too much about it, but Tiger's Mane stepped up the security work of the guards. He always had a strange feeling that the situation seemed to be wrong. But he couldn't tell what was wrong, so he could only strengthen his own defense to prevent unexpected things from happening. It's a pity that this is not on land. In case of an accident, he can't contact the second guard in Commander Xiaofeng's Tiger Regiment. But thinking about it, with their combat experience, once something happened, they should be able to react immediately. Beta Persei's nerves became nervous, and he was a little absent-minded even when he was accompanying Kikij. The days passed like this until 20 days later, they finally arrived at the sea area of Husung City. Only then did he relax a lot, and at this time Badao Jiang and Peng Yu, who were sent to inquire about the matter, finally came to report. For more than 20 days, the two ate and lived with the Navy warriors and worked hard to make friends with them. Finally, they figured out the situation of the first group. This time, they came to report to Beta Persei. Half an hour later, Beta Persei came to the main cabin where Yang Chendong was and reported the situation in detail. Young Master, Husung City has investigated many people and many things. Long Yuntian is one of the people who has been judged to be problematic. Beta Persei reported while paying attention to Yang Chendong's expression. Long Yuntian has a problem? What's the problem? Even if you know that he has a problem, why did Gao Xiong send him to pick me up? What does this mean? Yang Chendong was also a little confused, but it could be seen that he was somewhat angry. Yes, young master, this is the problem. Long Yuntian's problem is that he was not careful when inspecting the goods at sea, and that batch of goods happened to be one of the goods that Yang Taizhu smuggled out at that time. It is because of this matter that some people think that Long Yuntian may be Yang Taizhu's accomplice. Even if he is not, at least he is someone who helped him. I heard that because of this, there is still a lot of controversy. In the following time, Beta Persei gave a detailed report of the situation that Badao Jiang and Peng Yu learned from the soldiers below. According to Beta Persei, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Supervision, Wu Qian, believes that Long Yuntian has a problem and once proposed to remove him from his post and investigate, and even search his house. But this proposal was rejected by Commander Gao Xiong of the five-man team. What Commander Gao Xiong meant was that Long Yuntian was a good cadre, a cadre who could fight. It was just that he wasn't that principled in the past. Considering that the goods came from Crimson City and were wanted by the Security Bureau, it was reasonable that he didn't check them carefully. After all, the status of the Security Bureau was very special, and not every department had the right to order them around. Therefore, Long Yuntian's problem was at most a momentary lapse in inspection, and a person should not be killed because of this small matter. Chapter 900. Since then, the two of them had never found a way to solve Long Yuntian's problem. But soon there was an impact. With Long Yuntian's ability and experience, he was originally a popular candidate to be the commander of the 1st Marine Army's 3rd Division. But because of this, his appointment was blocked by the political department. Fortunately, Gao Xiong still acted and transferred him from the 3rd Division to the 1st Division. Considering the impact, he gave him the position of acting regiment commander of the 1st Division, instead of regiment commander. Right, 6th young master, Wu Qian's brother-in-law is the 1st Division's political commissar Su Hao. He's on the ship beside us. Beta Persei seemed to have thought of something and whispered to Yang Chendong. Yang Chendong listened quietly and slowly nodded. Even though he was secretly returning to Crimson City, he was afraid that he would attract too much attention, and that someone would have ideas about him on the way. But no matter what, he shouldn't have sent an acting regiment commander to escort him back. Now, it seemed that this was Commander Gao Xiong's idea. He was clearly using this method to remind him to pay more attention to this matter. Gao Xiong still understood Yang Chendong. He knew that as Yang Xie continued to grow stronger, he rarely interfered in the affairs of the lower ranks. For example, it was not easy for Yang Chendong to intervene in matters of Long Yuntian's level. That was why Gao Xiong arranged for this person to escort him back to Crimson City, hoping to use this method to remind him. Of course, Gao Xiong also had a sense of propriety. He did not ask Long Yuntian to take the initiative to say anything to Yang Chendong. This kind of matter of skipping a rank to report, unless it was the 6th young master who took the initiative to ask, the subordinates could not casually talk about it. Otherwise, If everyone had to report to Yang Qindong, he would not be able to handle it even if he worked 48 hours a day. That was why the current situation was like this. Long Yuntian escorted him back to the city as acting regiment commander. He also arranged for political commissar Su Hao to follow him. One was a political commissar, while the other was only an acting regimental commander. The former's brother-in-law was a high-ranking official in the Ministry of Supervision. Naturally, everyone would side with the former. It was no wonder that when Yang Qindong expressed his intimacy with Long Yuntian, the officers in the regiment revealed strange expressions. After figuring everything out, Yang Qindong sighed. The self-inspection was carried out under his instructions to prevent a similar incident to Yang Taizhu from happening again. Now, it seemed that the investigation was very strict. Not only that, it seemed to be a little excessive. If this continued, wouldn't it cause panic among the people? Go. Call Long Yuntian over. Remember, don't let anyone else see you. After pondering for a moment, Yang Qindong still wanted to hear what Long Yuntian had to say. Understood. Beta Persei nodded and turned to leave. Not long after, Long Yuntian appeared in front of Yang Qindong wearing a guard uniform. As soon as he appeared, he knelt on the ground with a plop and said that he was guilty. What are you guilty of? Yang Qindong's face was serious, but it was impossible to tell whether he was happy, angry, sad, or happy at this moment. I have let down the 6th young master's trust. I was careless during the inspection at sea, causing the smuggling ship to pass right in front of me, but I didn't know. I am guilty. Long Yuntian knelt on the ground, his eyes red as he said. Ever since he received the military order from Commander Gao Xiong, he had been waiting for this moment, waiting for Yang Qindong's private summons. When he came, Commander Gao Xiong had already said that the higher-ups were keeping a close eye on him. His position as acting regimental commander was only a temporary measure. If he couldn't solve it this time, he was afraid that when he returned, not only would he not be able to become a full member, he might not even be able to wear this uniform. If someone really wanted to investigate Yang Tieju's previous problem, he wouldn't be able to become a member of the Cold Front if he couldn't explain it clearly. This way, no one would dare to ask him if there was a problem. The best ending would be to be given a piece of land to farm. Although Long Yuntian wasn't afraid of being a farmer, he didn't want to continue farming in this situation. He didn't want to leave the army without a clear reason. However, he really had a problem that he couldn't explain clearly. If someone really didn't let go of this matter, he was afraid that other than a limited number of people, no one would be able to save him. And of course, Yang Qindong was among these limited number of people, and he was even the leader. After all, the leader of the 5-man team was the future 6th madam. Even she had to listen to the 6th young master. This could be said to be Long Yuntian's only hope, but no matter how he looked, the 6th young master didn't seem to have any intention of meeting him alone. Seeing that they were about to reach Crimson City in 3 days, he seemed to have lost all hope. He couldn't even sleep well these 2 days. Just when he couldn't see any hope in life, Beta Persei suddenly appeared, and even took his guard uniform. Long Yuntian was overjoyed. He knew that his only hope had appeared. When he saw Yang Qindong, he knelt down and admitted his mistake, tears streaming down his face. Yes, you're right. Whether it was because of carelessness or carelessness, the smuggled goods passed right under your nose, and you didn't notice. This is indeed a mistake that can't be ignored. It's only right that you be punished. Yang Qindong nodded. Yes, it's right. I'll obey the arrangement. Long Yuntian didn't have any intention of quibbling. If you do something wrong, you will be punished. There was nothing to doubt about this. What he suspected was that the punishment was a little too harsh, a little too targeted. This was also what Yang Qindong didn't understand. Logically speaking, Yang Tieju's smuggling wasn't the first time, so it was impossible for him to encounter Long Yuntian's inspection every time. If that was the case, then he would suspect that he was really involved in the smuggling. But if he didn't encounter it every time, then why did he have to target Long Yuntian like this? Could it be that there were other reasons for this? Captain Long, let me ask you, how did the other officers involved in the Navy deal with it? 6th young master, one of the company commanders, was directly expelled from the military, and was given a piece of land to farm. There were also a few people who wrote checks, and this matter was passed. Long Yuntian didn't dare to hide anything. This was his last chance, so he couldn't hide anything. Oh. The same thing, the same problem. How could the results be so different? What is the reason? Yang Chendong keenly found the problem. This. Long Yuntian didn't answer immediately, but hesitated. What? In front of the sixth young master. You still don't want to tell the truth? Beta Persei on the side saw that Long Yuntian didn't know what was good for him, and he was angry and roared with fire in his eyes. No, I don't dare. I will say it now. It's because the vice-captain in charge of the case, Wu Qian, was selfish. Knowing that he couldn't hesitate at this time, Long Yuntian threw caution to the wind and said, Bastard, you can't talk about this kind of thing. Do you have evidence? Yang Chendong frowned after listening. When it came to a vice-captain, he couldn't help but be cautious. In particular, Luan Xiaoyu mentioned Wu Qian's name more than once in the telegram, saying that this person's work ability was very good, impartial, and he was the main force in this inspection operation. This time, when he returned to Qixing City, Yang Chendong originally planned to meet this person. If this person was indeed outstanding, he could be put in an important position. But now Long Yuntian actually said that Wu Qian was selfish, which made him take it seriously. There is no evidence. Long Yuntian knelt on the ground and shook his head. Everything was told to me by Xie Kuan, the assistant to Vice-Captain Wu. At that time, there was a rumor that I might be the commander of the 3rd Division of the 1st Sea Army. This Xie Kuan came to me and said that Su Hao, Vice-Captain Wu's brother-in-law, is now a lieutenant colonel in the Navy. He wanted to see if I could consider giving him a real position and let him be the commander of the 1st Regiment of the 3rd Division. If he couldn't, he could choose one of the 3 regiments of the 1st Division to be the commander. I knew that Su Hao had some ability, but he wasn't qualified to be the commander of a regiment, so I refused. Soon after, someone began to investigate me and said that I made a mistake in the inspection work in the coastal defense. Long Yuntian was still speaking slowly, and Yang Chendong could be considered to have a preliminary understanding of the matter. How a high-ranking officer used his authority, especially how to prevent his family from using his authority to do things that went against the law and morals, had once been a headache for Yang Chendong. The law was nothing more than human feelings. The law was the bottom line of morality, and morality was human feelings. The existence of the law was to protect the existence of human feelings. Especially for the Han people, who were originally a race that valued human feelings, it was impossible to completely eliminate such things. Thus, there was the saying of pillow talk, and there was the saying of a 7th-rank official in front of the Prime Minister. It was just that he didn't expect everything to happen so quickly. Qixing City had only developed for a few years, and such a problem had already appeared. And it had become so serious that it directly involved the appointment of a division commander. First, there was the matter of Yang Taizhu using his father's authority, and then there was this unfair treatment, and even public threat. Yang Chendong knew that trouble had finally arrived. History had proven that when a country went from being strong to being defeated, it was usually due to the internal corruption. As the leader of the royal family, none of them were willing to be the ruler of a fallen country. The various decrees and orders that came out of their mouths were in principle for the good of the people, for the good of the country. The policies were good, but the people who carried out the policies were bad. It was because they were corrupt, and the governance was rotten, that in the end the good policies were not implemented well, and in the end, the people had no way to live, and had no choice but to rebel. All along, Yang Chendong's main focus had been on the expansion of the military and the development of business. Reality had proven that these two matters had been greatly improved, and because of that, Yang Xie's faction had been constantly growing and expanding. However, when it came to internal governance, especially local governance, he had never thought of a better solution. Chapter 901. He had thought of doing things according to the democracy of later generations, but now it was the Great Ming Dynasty. The people who had been ruled by a feudal society for many years would not be able to adapt to democracy. Of course, he could also use his supreme authority to force it. But if that was the case, not to mention the new problems that would arise internally, once democracy was established, would the people agree to his continued expansion of power? The people were peace-loving. As long as their lives were good, they would be satisfied. How could they possibly support the expansion? If that really happened, they would really be shooting themselves in the foot. In order to achieve the unprecedented ideal in his heart, Yang Chendong must centralize power in the central government, or even in himself. For this reason, he would accept the infamy of being a warmonger and a butcher. But in this way, how to manage his own internal affairs and make them invulnerable became the most important thing at the moment. It was even a problem that must be solved. Sixth young master, the company commander who was fired, was also blackmailed. I heard that the company commander has a very beautiful wife who was fancied by Xie Koen's assistant. Xie Koen wanted to persuade them to divorce first and then marry her himself. But the company commander refused no matter what, so this happened. Long Yuntian was still talking when Yang Chendong shook his head. Well, the young master already knows what happened. I will send someone to investigate. If it is really as you said, I will definitely clear your name. But before the matter is settled, we can't act rashly and alert the enemy. Do you understand? It was just a one-sided story. Yang Chendong could not completely believe it. He just took it as a reference. But to be able to say this, it meant that he already had doubts about this matter. Long Yuntian, who was kneeling on the ground, was overjoyed. After kowtowing a few more times, he left under Beta Persei's gaze. Young master. There was no one else in the room, so Beta Persei carefully asked for instructions. Yes, we can't doubt Long Yuntian's words, but without investigation, we have no right to speak. How about this, when we reach Crimson City, you go investigate in private, and see if what Long Yuntian said is true. Remember, don't make any noise. We can't let a bad person go, but we can't wrong a good person either. Yang Chendong still didn't have the intention to investigate openly. No matter what, Wu Qian was a candidate recommended by Luan Xiaoyu. Based on this, he couldn't make a decision without conclusive evidence. Okay. Beta Persei nodded, indicating that he had noted it down. Other than Beta Persei and a few core guards, no one knew about Long Yuntian's secret meeting with Yang Chendong. Another day passed as if nothing had happened. This morning, Long Yuntian came to report that if everything went smoothly, they would be able to reach Crimson City the next day. Yang Chendong brought the three madams out to enjoy the sea breeze. Coincidentally, just as they appeared, not far away, there were several merchant ships that were obviously larger in size. Suddenly, an unknown ship approached. Out of instinct, Yang Air ordered the guards to prepare for battle. At the same time, he reported to Yang Chendong and asked the young master and the madams to enter the cabin to rest. It's okay. Yang Chendong stood on the deck and shook his head. He had already seen the bright 5-star flag on those ships. Based on this, even if the other party was not on their side, they should be friends. And he had already asked, this was the outer sea area of Crimson City. It was only about 500 nautical miles away from the city. If this place was not safe, then the First Sea Army was really useless. Of course, there was another main reason why Yang Chendong made this judgment. That was, he did not see the panic on the soldiers of the 1st Regiment of the 1st Division. Presumably, they should know about this caravan, or perhaps they should know and be familiar with who they are. The facts confirmed Yang Chendong's thoughts. When the distance between the two sides was less than 10 nautical miles, the other side actually sent a small boat to approach them. It was at this time, with the help of binoculars, Yang Chendong saw that the small group of people were actually blonde Western foreigners. How the hell did they grow up to look like this? Beta Persei looked at the foreigners that appeared through the binoculars, and was very curious. While cursing, he called the acting commander, Long Yuntian, and asked, "Who are they? What are they doing? Don't they know who is on the ship? Inform them, and tell them not to come close." Yes. Long Yuntian nodded repeatedly, then went to the bow of the ship and personally commanded the flag bearers to signal the other ship not to come close. At the same time, after consulting Yang Chendong, he fired a shot. The shell landed right in front of the small boat, setting off a monstrous wave. After the shot was fired, the other party's small boat stopped. After seeing the contents of the flag signal sent by Long Yuntian, they replied that they have no malicious intentions. They just want to ask if Long Yuntian has anything to sell. They are willing to pay a high price for it. Tell them no. Tell them to stay away. Otherwise, sink them all and throw them into the sea to feed the fish. Beta Persei said angrily, then walked to Yang Qindong and reported the situation. Call Long Yuntian over. Yang Qindong was interested in this merchant ship that suddenly appeared. He believed that the other party did not know the importance of him and his group on the ship. The reason why they did this was probably not the first time. They wanted to come over, but it was just a habit and they wanted to try their luck. Long Yuntian was quickly called in front of Yang Qindong, and the matter about the merchant ship quickly came to a conclusion. This was indeed a merchant ship team. They belonged to a force called the Kingdom of Portugal, and they did want to trade with them. Countless facts had proven that mercenary fleets often had good things that could not be bought or seen outside. Merchants pursued profit, and they just wanted to complete a transaction. After receiving a serious warning from Long Yuntian, they had already retreated. Portugal. The corners of Yang Qindong's mouth curled into a smile. In this era, the Kingdom of Portugal was still very powerful. They were once glorious in this era, together with Spain. In history, after more than 20 years, the Portuguese finally occupied the northern Moroccan city of Tangier, which had been competing with Spain for a long time. They would develop even more powerful. In history, the Portuguese fleet should not have discovered the great Ming Dynasty. It was through the efforts of generations of seafarers that they truly opened the world between the East and the West. Among them, there were people like Magellan and Galileo. However, in this life, because Gao Xiong and the others had obtained the map given by Yang Qindong, they had gone to the West first. As a result, they had accelerated their contact with the Western world, which was why they had appeared in this sea area so early. Do they usually do this? Will they also stop ships halfway to buy things? Yang Qindong looked at Long Yuntian and asked a key question. Yes, they often do this. But we will not trade with them. The Navy has Navy regulations. They can't stop ships without orders, so their actions have no meaning. However, even though they have not succeeded even once, they still continue to do so. I really don't know what to say about their perseverance. Long Yuntian quickly gave an answer to this question. Okay, I know. Yang Qindong nodded. He was still reassured by the Navy's style. But letting them be so close to Kiosk City is not a good thing. It seems that it is necessary to arrange for Gao Xiong to talk to them. While he can sell them some things at a high price, he can also test their attitude and learn more about the situation in the West. This will play a very important role in the future expedition there. The appearance of the Portuguese merchant ships made Yang Qindong's idea of sending troops and conquering the West become hot. Some of the resources there are still good, and they can be occupied early. This is part of his future grand plan. Under the threat of gunfire, the Portuguese merchant ships gradually moved away. The next morning, the 1st Regiment successfully entered the coastal area of Kiosk City. In the morning, the fleet finally appeared in front of the new dock. Looking from afar, they could already see the crowd of people welcoming them. Before, they were far away, so they couldn't see anything. But now that they are close, the majestic charm of Kiosk City really appeared in everyone's sight. Seeing this, the 3 ladies couldn't help but exclaim. Even the second lady, Xiao Yin, who was the first to come here, had to sigh at this moment. After a few years, Kiosk City has become even more magnificent. Back again. After a sigh, Yang Qindong stepped off the ship, and once again stepped on the ground of Kiosk City. The 6th young master returned to Kiosk City. The second lady was pregnant, so the whole palace became very lively. It was on this night that Yang Qindong was alone with Hu Yan when he mentioned the issue of children and his worries. Hu Yan was a very kind woman, and her relationship with Xiao Yin and the other sisters had always been very good. It was precisely because he knew this that Yang Qindong confided in her and told her his thoughts, including some new rules that needed to be established. With regards to Yang Qindong's requests, Hu Yan agreed to all of them. She lay in Yang Qindong's arms with a blissful look on her face. Dong Shuai, you are very thoughtful. This must become a rule. In the future, When any sister is pregnant, they must do this. I will also set myself as an example. Unless second sister allows me to go over, I will definitely not casually step into her courtyard. It's been hard on you. Yang Chendong was touched by Hu Yan's kindness and gently stroked her arm. Chapter 902. How could that be? We are husband and wife. Dong Shuai, please don't speak to me in this manner in the future. Oh right, you went to see my grandparents and parents. How are they? Are they all right? Not wanting to talk about this matter, Hu Yan asked about the situation in the capital of Beiming. All right, they are fine. Father is now a third-rank official and has real military power in his hands. Even if something happens, there will be more room to maneuver. Furthermore, grandfather is a shrewd old man. It won't be easy for others to take advantage of him. Pei, what shrewd old man? Dong Shuai, you used the wrong words. Hu Yan said coquettishly. Yes. Yang Chendong raised his hands in surrender. It was my fault for using the wrong words. I should be punished. Let me take good care of Yener tonight. As he said that, he pounced over. Immediately, there was a cry of surprise. Qiqian City's Department of Supervision. A 4-story building made of red bricks and iron tendons. It represented the supervision and encouragement of authority. Vice Minister Wu Qian was working here. On this day, he was walking home after finishing his work. When he passed by a small alley, a bearded man blocked his path. He didn't look very old. His eyes were very spirited, and his voice was like a large bell. His voice seemed to be able to shake the heavens. Are you Minister Wu? The man looked at the average 1.72 meters tall middle-aged man and asked. I am Vice Minister Wu Qian. Who are you? Wu Qian looked at the man with a puzzled expression. He was very sure that this was the first time he had seen this man. But for some reason, he felt as though they had met before. Wu Qian's residence was only 2 streets away from the Department of Supervision. Usually, in order to train his body, he would walk back and forth. He didn't even bring a single guard with him. Reality proved that Qiqian City's security was very good. This was the first time he had encountered someone blocking his path. Even if he was blocked halfway, Wu Qian's eyes didn't show a trace of panic. There could only be 2 possibilities. First, he was a selfless person. He had no ulterior motives and wasn't afraid of any evil spirits. Also, he was very good at acting. But no matter what kind of person this person was, since he had appeared, he would find a way to make him give himself away. Yes, then the person I'm looking for is you. It's like this. I won't beat around the bush. I'm here for Long Yuntian. Raise your hand and let him live. As a reward, these will all be yours. As he spoke, the man took out a stack of banknotes. Each banknote had 5,000 taels written on it, and there were 10 banknotes in total. It had to be said that the person who came had shown his sincerity. However, in Wu Qian's eyes, contempt appeared in his eyes. What? You want to bribe me, but do you know that we have a law that states that anyone who embezzles 10,000 taels of silver will be beheaded? That's enough to behead me 5 times. Sai, only you and I know about this. Besides, I didn't give you 10,000 taels of silver. Each banknote only has 5,000 taels of silver. You can't behead me. The person who came was obviously prepared. As he said this with a smile, he said, Hee, I've asked around. Although your salary is high, these 50,000 taels of silver are enough for you to earn for a few years. How about it? Now, as long as you nod your head, these will all be yours. Oh, you're right. Wu Qian's face revealed a trace of emotion. After a slight hesitation, he reached out and took the 10 silver notes in his hand. But I don't know what you mean by being magnanimous? Seeing Wu Qian accept the banknotes just like that, a trace of regret flashed in the person's eyes. But soon he returned to normal. It doesn't mean anything. As long as you don't hold on to Long Yuntian's matter, we will naturally take care of the rest. Your request is simple. But what kind of person do you think I Wu Qian am? Men, quickly come and catch him. There's a thief here. Just a moment ago, Wu Qian still had a smile on his face, but all of a sudden, he turned hostile and began to shout loudly. This shout frightened the person who came. Everything happened so suddenly that he was caught off guard. As soon as the shout came out, hurried footsteps could be heard from the nearby streets. Needless to say, it must be Lung Feng, who was patrolling the streets, rushing over. That person snorted angrily at Wu Qian. "You're ruthless." He turned and ran, causing Wu Qian to pounce forward to catch him. The person escaped, but the banknotes of 50,000 taels of silver were not returned. The person who came had a gloomy face. After entering another street, when he came out, he no longer had the beard under his face. He looked much cooler. Who else could it be other than Beta Persei? Just now he went to test this Wu Qian. He began to investigate this matter after coming to Crimson City. He found his brother, Yang Wu, and the director of the security bureau, Che Chao. He even followed the sixth young master's instructions and found the fifth madam, Su Mun-er. Her CIA training had been completed, and she was spreading out her own network. Although it was not complete, a high official like Wu Qian still did some investigation. He checked everything that could be checked, and all the results showed that this Wu Qian was a serious, responsible, and impartial person. This result naturally did not satisfy Beta Persei. When Long Yuntian reported to him, he was watching from the side. This person was the kind of person who had nowhere to go and would not lie. Therefore, he still did not approve of this result, and decided to give it a try. So he borrowed 50,000 taels of silver from Yang Chendong for that test. The result naturally did not satisfy him. After all, Wu Qian still took the money, but in the end he called for help. What was the meaning of that? With a heart full of confusion, Beta Persei returned to the palace and saw Yang Chendong. The sixth young master couldn't help but laugh when he saw his dejected expression. "What's wrong? Is it because he didn't accept your money?" "Young master, he took it." Beta Persei looked up and said something that surprised Yang Chendong. While Beta Persei was learning about Wu Qian, Yang Chendong was not idle either. He was also investigating this person's situation. He also found Luan Xiaoyu to hear her opinion. Unexpectedly, Luan Xiaoyu held Wu Qian in high esteem. Her evaluation of him was far higher than that of the Minister of Supervision, Xinyu. According to her, if one of these cadres was the Iron Mask that Yang Chendong spoke of, then Wu Qian was such a person. All kinds of information also showed that Wu Qian was an upright person. Even when he went to and from work, he did not ride a horse or sit in a sedan chair like the other cadres. Instead, he walked on foot and did not even bring a guard with him. It seemed unreasonable to say that there was something wrong with such a person. Therefore, when Beta Persei came to borrow the money, he thought it was unnecessary. But since he had to try, he might as well try. Unexpectedly, Wu Qian really took the money. Didn't this mean that he was really a greedy person and very good at disguising himself? Had everyone been deceived by him? While Yang Chendong was still thinking about which part of the problem had gone wrong, Beta Persei spoke again. He did take the money, but then he shouted and attracted the patrolling soldiers. "I was worried that it would look bad if I was caught, so I could only run back first." Oh. Hearing this, Yang Chendong could not help but laugh. He really thought that the other party had taken the money. Now it seemed that the money was just evidence. "Young master, what are you laughing at? The money is gone, and I did not test whether he was a greedy person. It was my dereliction of duty." Beta Persei did not understand the meaning of this laughter, but since the money was given to him, he had to give an explanation. "Well, the money will not be lost. If you don't believe me, you can send someone to the Ministry of Supervision in the afternoon and see if he handed it in." Well, it seems that the problem should not be with this Wu Qian, but with his family. "In this case, you go and do one more thing." Calling Beta Persei to his ear, Yang Chendong instructed. That afternoon, as soon as he went to work, Wu Qian handed over the 50,000 taels of silver. At the same time, he showed an attitude of wanting to investigate Long Zitian. For this matter, he directly sent someone to the First Sea Army's military headquarters to explain the situation to Commander Gao Xiong. At the same time, he also said that Long Zitian bribed his superior, and that the problem was extremely serious. There was also a need to investigate where the 50,000 taels of silver came from. Gao Xiong had already received Long Zitian's report, and knew that he had reported the matter to the sixth young master. He thought that the problem was about to be solved. He did not expect to receive another report from Wu Qian. For a moment he was in a bit of a dilemma. Since the matter had been reported to the sixth young master, he could not casually hand over the person. So he went to the palace and wanted to make a face-to-face report to Yang Chendong about this matter. But before he could see the person, Beta Persei directly blocked his way. The young master said that the matter will be clear tomorrow. Commander Gao, please delay it for one more afternoon. Since Beta Persei said so, Gao Xiong used the excuse that Long Zitian was on an urgent mission and was not at home. When the matter was passed back to Wu Qian, his assistant Xiekuan immediately said, "Minister, I have already asked. Long Zitian is in the Navy's military headquarters and did not go anywhere." "Is there such a thing?" Wu Qian was obviously angry. Then he slammed the table. "I will find the sixth young master and tell him personally." Minister, it's late today. Tomorrow, if Gao Xiong still does not release the person, then report it tomorrow and let him suffer a little." Xiekuan stopped him. Now that it was almost time to get off work, it was not wise to disturb the sixth young master. "Well then wait until tomorrow. If you don't hand over the person, I will go to the palace and see the sixth young master," Wu Qian said angrily. Chapter 903. That afternoon, Wu Qian got off work on time. His assistant Xiekuan saw that there was nothing for him to worry about. He hummed a tune as he walked out of the monitoring building and went straight to a nearby brothel. There was a very good-looking girl who had just arrived. Xiekuan had spent a lot of money to bribe her. He might be able to be the groom tonight. With a face full of pride, Xiekuan saw that the brothel was just around the corner. With a smile on his face, Xiekuan felt his vision turn black, followed by a pain in his neck, and he lost consciousness. When Xiekuan woke up, he was already in a tightly sealed room. The walls were hung with various torture tools. The raging fire was right beside him, and the feeling of being roasted made his body tense up involuntarily. "You're Xiekuan, right?" A shout suddenly sounded in his ear, and a big man with a scar on his face appeared in front of him. He held a whip in his hand and looked at Xiekuan with an inquisitive look, as if to see how much punishment he could endure. "Ah, who are you? Who are you? Do you know who I am?" Seeing this situation, Xiekuan knew that he might have been kidnapped. If it was really the mercenaries who wanted to arrest him, according to the procedure, they would first show their documents. Even as the assistant of Vice Minister Wu Qian, he needed to greet the Vice Minister's office. However, they did not do so, which was enough to explain the problem. He became extremely nervous. He did not know why these people were looking for him. If they paid for his life, what should he do? Working in the Ministry of Supervision building, Xiekuan was very clear about the mercenaries' policy towards bandits. They had always killed one as an example to others. In order to destroy evidence and not be discovered, they would often end up killing the hostage. At the thought that he might die, Xiekuan immediately closed his eyes and shouted loudly, "I don't know you, and I didn't see what you looked like. As long as you don't kill me, everything will be fine." Xiekuan suddenly closed his eyes, which made the people around him stunned, especially Beta Persei, who was hiding in the dark, who smiled uninterestedly. This Xiekuan was very perceptive. If that was the case, the next thing would be easy to handle. Things would be a lot easier. After knowing that they weren't here to kill him, and that Xiekuan was only here to beg for his life, he was very cooperative. He gave him whatever he wanted, and answered whatever he was asked. The final result shocked Beta Persei. When he saw the confession and where the silver was stored, he waved his hand at Ba Daojiang, who had a scar on his face. "Second brother, what should we do next?" Ba Daojiang walked towards Beta Persei, who was hiding in the shadows, and chuckled. It was quite fun to be able to take on such a task. The only thing that made him unhappy was that Xiekuan was too cooperative. He hadn't even shown any of his skills yet, and Xiekuan had already flirted with him. "I'll go get the money and report to the young master." Beta Persei patted Ba Daojiang on the shoulder, then took out an ingot of silver from his bosom, and went out for supper with his brothers. "How should we deal with this person? Should we Ba Daojiang took the ingot and made a throat-slitting gesture. We can't kill him. The young master has instructed that this person should be left for Wu Qian to deal with. We'll just watch the show. Beta Persei chuckled. Wouldn't it be too easy to kill Xie Kuan now? It would be better to leave him behind to verify his sincerity. Understood. Ba Daojiang chuckled and watched Beta Persei leave. According to Xie Kuan's instructions, Beta Persei and his men quickly retrieved the silver. There were a total of 3 big chests containing 15,000 taels of silver. They were carried into the palace and sent to Yang Chendong. Why is it silver? Yang Chendong didn't seem surprised by this result, but he was curious that the silver wasn't exchanged for banknotes. After all, these 3 big chests weren't very good for hiding. This is all Xie Kuan's idea. He was worried that one day something would happen. Even if he had banknotes in his hands, he wouldn't dare to exchange them for silver. He said it was more convenient this way. Moreover, when he wanted to, he could go take a look and touch it. It would give him a great sense of satisfaction. Young master, what do you think this is? Beta Persei chuckled. Psychopath. Yang Chendong shook his head and said after giving an attribution. How is it? Did he confess? Yes, he confessed everything. He used Vice Minister Wu's name to ask for bribes from many military and political cadres. With the previous company commander and Long Yuntian as examples, many people chose to swallow their anger. In just over half a year, he got so much silver. He also said that he and Vice Minister Wu's concubine would split the silver 50-50. Political Commissar Su Hao took the opportunity to take the high position of regiment commander. It could be said that they each took what they needed. By the way, Wu Qian was just like his name. He really didn't have any money. He also didn't participate in this matter. Xie Kuan also confirmed this matter. Beta Persei had just handed the information he received and the confession to Yang Chendong. But he saw that the 6th young master had already stood up angrily and slammed the table. What a clear division of the loot. Tell me, what other high-ranking officials were involved? Disregarding everything else, just the fact that Su Hao was able to become a regimental officer and was in the most elite unit of the Cold Front, it was impossible that no one else had participated in this. As for Wu Qian, he could only prove that he had good integrity and that Luan Xiaoyu didn't misjudge him. However, whether he could be put in an important position or not depended on how he dealt with this matter next. Young master, please calm down. There were other people involved, but they were all the assistants of those high-ranking officials. Many things were done by them. They are the most trusted people of those high-ranking officials. Some things were done by them. Beta Persei said in a low voice while carefully observing Yang Chendong's expression. In a sense, he was also one of Yang Chendong's people. This was equivalent to implicating him. If you don't clean the house, how can you clean the world? They can't even manage the people around them well. They are also responsible. It seems that this self-examination is not thorough enough. Yang Chendong said with emotion. 1,000-mile dike would collapse because of an ant's nest. Whenever something big happened, it would be because of a small matter that wasn't done well. In the end, it would add up to become a big matter. Yang Chendong thought to himself. It seemed that the self-examination wasn't enough. The departments that were supervised were also not complete. This time, he could take advantage of the fact that he was in Crimson City to do a good job. At the same time, he could also set up a plan for it. Yang Chendong slept late that day. On the morning of the second day, when the various departments had just started work, 3 large boxes suddenly appeared at the entrance of the Ministry of Supervision, as well as a large envelope addressed to Vice Minister Wu Qian. No one could explain how this thing came to be, but it appeared in front of everyone in such a grand manner. This matter naturally caused a commotion, and caused a commotion. When Vice Minister Wu Qian saw this at the entrance of his unit, he immediately ordered his men to open the 3 boxes. Then, a dazzling amount of silver appeared in front of everyone. Wow! There's so much silver. Yeah, I'm afraid there's more than 10,000 silver. What's the meaning of this? Why did they leave so much silver in front of our Ministry of Supervision in the morning? That's right, that's right. Could it be that some official is here to surrender? But this is already more than 10,000 silver. I'm afraid that even if he surrenders, the punishment won't be too light. The sounds of discussion came one after another. Although Yang Chendong had set a rule that embezzling 10,000 silver would result in the death penalty, there were exceptions. For example, if there were meritorious deeds or surrenders, it would depend on the person. Everyone was wondering if this was the act of a corrupt official to save his life. Wu Qian was also dazzled by the white silvers. Although the amount of silver was recorded in the investigation of corrupt officials, it was only a number after all. It was not as direct as the silver in front of him. However, Wu Qian was merely shocked. When he saw that there was another letter on the box that was addressed to him, Wu Qian reached out to take it, and then opened it. In an instant, everyone's attention was attracted. Just when everyone's eyes fell on Wu Qian, waiting to see how he would react, and guess who wrote this? Vice Minister Wu suddenly lost his balance and fell straight to the ground. Fortunately, someone with sharp eyes and agile hands quickly reached out to support him, so he did not fall. However, at this moment, Wu Qian's face was pale, and his breathing was a little rapid. Everyone was even more surprised to see such a loss of composure. What exactly was written in the letter that made Vice Minister Wu, who was known for being impartial, lose his composure like this? Let's go. At some point, Minister Shen Yu appeared and his assistant began to chase people away. Soon, the place became quiet again. Shen Yu also took 2 steps forward and came to Wu Qian, asking with concern, "Old Wu, are you okay?" "I'm fine. I have something to report to the minister." Wu Qian's expression slowly returned to normal. Although he was still very shocked and angry, since it had already happened, he had to find a way to solve it. "Okay, then let's go to my office to talk. Come, seal these 3 boxes first." Shen Yu nodded, and then ordered the people around him. In the minister's office, Wu Qian showed the letter to Shen Yu. It was not accurate to say that it was a letter. It was a confession, and Xie Kuan's name and handprint were written in the confession column. Of course, he was very familiar with the handwriting. He could tell at a glance that it was handwritten. He didn't expect such a big thing to happen to the people around him. At the same time, even his newly married wife and brother-in-law were sinners. This blow came too fast, so fast that Wu Qian wasn't prepared at all, and couldn't react in time. Chapter 904. In comparison, Minister Shen Yu was much calmer. After he read the letter, he sighed. He did not expect that his impartial and hardworking deputy would be involved in such a situation. If it were anyone else, they would be in pain and in a dilemma. "Minister, I would like to withdraw." Wu Qian announced his decision. This matter involved his assistant and family. He no longer had the authority to deal with this matter. "Withdraw?" Shen Yu pondered for a moment and shook his head. "Normally, this matter involves your family and the people around you. You should withdraw. But now, this matter has been made known to everyone in the Ministry of Supervision. Perhaps the truth will spread soon. If you withdraw now, people will inevitably say that you are trying to escape. Although it is only a difference of 1 word, sometimes rumors can be fatal." "Minister, what should I do?" After Wu Qian heard this, he realized that he had underestimated the matter. If it was before, he could withdraw. But if he withdrew now, he was afraid that someone would really use this matter to make an issue out of it. One must know that the Ministry of Supervision looked impressive, but in reality, they had offended many people. Once something happened to them, there would be many people who would kick them when they were down. Investigate it. Investigate it yourself. Then use the results to slap the faces of those who are watching the show. Let them see what kind of person you are, old Wu. Take this opportunity to show your impartial side. Shen Yu said with an encouraging attitude, but then he changed the topic and said, "But if you want to do this, then you must be prepared to sacrifice some people. And if you can't do this, then I agree to withdraw." Wu Qian understood what Shen Yu meant. He was asking him to make a decision. Should he choose the law or should he choose his family? The problem was there. Presumably, it was a very difficult choice for anyone. It was even a difficult decision to make. Wu Qian didn't say anything. Shen Yu took out a box of Heavenly Con cigarettes from his pocket. He took out a stick and put it in his mouth. Then he took out another stick and handed it to Wu Qian. After lighting it up, he took a puff and said, "I know that anyone in your position would be very difficult. But since we're in this position, we have to make our own personal contributions. Our bodies aren't good enough, so we can't go into battle and kill enemies like Lung Feng." But the sixth young master once said that there's no distinction between a position and a job. It's all about making contributions. Think about it. Because of our hard work, many people are now living a life that was unimaginable in the past. Didn't you choose to work here and contribute because you couldn't stand the corruption of the great Ming Dynasty? So every time I encounter something that I can't decide, I will think about what my original intention was. Sometimes, I even feel very grateful to the sixth young master. If he didn't send people to bring me here, I wouldn't have known that there was such a world outside the great Ming Dynasty. The Han people can live so well, have such self-respect, and be respected by others. To be honest, I like this place. Even when I'm old, I won't regret what I've done because this is the life I want and the life I want to see. Director, don't say any more. When has my original intention ever changed? Don't worry, I'll personally deal with this matter. I'll also let others see what kind of person I, Wu Qian, am. Wu Qian suddenly stood up. His eyes flashed with determination. Yes, he was once an official of the great Ming Dynasty. He belonged to the type that wasn't favored. Later on, when the great Ming Dynasty split into the north and south, he became an official of the southern Ming Dynasty. He was a county magistrate in Yunnan, a place that people called the Savage Land. King Minzhuang and the others suddenly rebelled, and the county couldn't be defended. He followed the people out of the city and went straight to Guangdong. Along the way, he had clearly seen the corrupt officials of the southern Ming Empire. Those officials ate and drank well every day. Then, they turned around and watched the people starve to death because they didn't have anything to eat. From that time on, Wu Qian completely lost confidence in Bai Ming's officials. Until the start of the money-buying activities, he hid his identity and came to Qixian City. It was also at that time that his wife died of starvation. His current wife was remarried not long ago. She couldn't be considered a main wife, but a concubine. Speaking of which, when Wu Qian first came to Qixian City, he was shocked by everything here. At that time, he didn't have the authority or qualifications to come to Qixian City. He could only live in a small place in the countryside. But even so, he was given enough land to support him. Moreover, the tax was meager. It followed the grain production, and there was no pressure at all. It could be said that as long as people weren't lazy, they could live a rich life. However, as a former county magistrate, he was more curious. If the countryside was like this, then what would the city be like? It was also at that time that Wu Qian worked hard and performed well. In the end, he relied on his own strength to complete the process of coming from the countryside to Qixian City. Then he saw a different world. It was a place that he didn't even dare to think about in reality, but it was his dream. Then, with his hard work, he climbed up step by step until he received the attention of the future 6th Madame Wan Xiaoyu. Finally, he became the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Supervision. Thinking back to the past, if this matter was in the past, perhaps he wouldn't have hesitated too much. But now he was actually requesting to withdraw. Since he felt troubled, did this mean that his original intentions had changed? After a conversation with Shenyu, Wu Qian pulled himself together, and then walked out of the minister's office. A series of orders were sent out from his mouth. First, Xie Kuan, who was sick at home and didn't go to work, was arrested at home. He thought that this time he could spend money to avoid the disaster. However, when the door was broken open and a squad of law enforcement officers from the Ministry of Supervision appeared in front of him, he felt his vision go dark. He knew that this time, it was over. Then, Political Commissar Su Hao was arrested in the military camp. Originally, he wanted to use his identity as a political commissar to resist. However, when he saw that the person accompanying him was actually Commander Gao Xiong, he knew that resisting was courting death. Finally, Wu Chunshur was arrested. Compared to the two men, she wasn't that panicked. Perhaps she knew that this day would come, or perhaps she thought that she would be fine because she was Wu Qian's concubine. The three main personnel were arrested swiftly and decisively. Then some staff members from the Ministry of Supervision and other departments were arrested. They were usually the people around the top leaders. Usually, anyone who saw them would laugh at them. However, this time, they were all blocked in the office by the law enforcement officers of the Ministry of Supervision. Every time a leader wanted to stand up and speak, the law enforcement officers would say that they had something to discuss with Wu Qian. With just this one sentence, all the leaders shut their mouths and did not say anything. The Ministry of Supervision was an existence that everyone wanted to avoid. Who would take the initiative to approach them? Beta Persei arranged for people to keep an eye on Xie Kuan, and the other wanted criminals in the morning. He was afraid that these people would escape. When he saw the law enforcement officers of the Ministry of Supervision appear, and they were ordered to come by Vice Minister Wu Qian, he knew that his task was completed. The next step was to see how the verdict would be. In the palace, Yang Chendong was accompanying the first madam, Hu Yan, and the pregnant second madam to chat and bask in the sun. Yang Wu suddenly appeared with a document in his hand, and an anxious look on his face. Old Wu, what happened? Young Heir saw Yang Wu's anxious expression, and walked over curiously. Old Wu, what happened? The verdict is out. A total of 8 people are sentenced to death and 32 people are going to different degrees of reform through labor. Yang Wu said in an excited voice. So fast. Beta Persei was also surprised after hearing it. It had only been 2 days since yesterday. Although he thought that Wu Qian might continue to be impartial, he did not expect it to be so fast, and the sentence was quite heavy. He reached out and grabbed the document. When he saw the names of Xie Kuan, Su Hao, and Madame Wu Su among the 8 people who were sentenced to death, he had to say with admiration, I, Beta Persei, am rarely impressed by anyone other than the young master. Now I'm impressed by Wu Qian. After a sigh, Beta Persei sent the document to Yang Chendong. He just glanced at it briefly and nodded. I already know about the matter and I agree with this decision. In addition, all the leaders who were implicated will have to write a letter of self-criticism. They will also have to publicly review it in their respective units. If anyone disagrees or is in conflict, then report their name. I will personally send them to the countryside, and personally choose a piece of land for them to live on for the rest of their lives. As for Wu Qian, the people around him are rotten. He should also reflect on it, and let him stay at home to reflect on his mistakes. Yang Chendong's order was quickly issued in the form of a document. Although Yang Chendong had returned to Qiqian City, he rarely expressed his opinions on some of the work below. Even if a department was not doing well, he would usually talk to its main leader in private. The number of times he gave orders in the form of a document like this was really rare. It was precisely because it was rare that it attracted attention and attention. Originally, when some of the people around the leaders were in trouble, they did not care and thought that they could just find another one. They did not even think about what they had done wrong, not to mention to do any inspection. But as soon as the document was issued, they knew that they had angered the 6th young master this time. At the moment, none of them dared to take a deep breath and immediately wrote a reflection in person with a proper attitude. Chapter 905. 8 people were killed and executed on the spot. The execution was carried out on the same night. From being caught to being sentenced, it did not even take 48 hours for them to lose their lives. As for the 32 people who were put through labor, they were also sent out of the city the next afternoon. It could be seen that if they did not work hard and get rid of their problems, they would have to work for the rest of their lives. The matter was resolved so quickly, which was out of many people's expectations. In Crimson Nest City, in a courtyard that was only the size of a courtyard, a valiant and handsome man was looking up at the sky. Looking at the bright moon in the sky, he could not help but say, "What a good method, how admirable." "What are you saying now?" Just as the man was looking at the moon, a woman's voice sounded beside him. It was gentle and pleasing to the ear. "Haha, it's nothing. I'm just admiring the 6th young master's boldness and methods. It should have been like this long ago. Some of the workers around the leaders are even more arrogant than the leaders. If we don't get rid of this trend, something will happen sooner or later." The man turned and smiled. When he looked at the woman in the courtyard, his face was as warm as spring. That's right, my sixth brother is amazing. To be honest, when I was young, I did not know that he had such ability. Everything that has happened now makes me feel like I'm in a dream, the woman said with a smile as she got up and poured some warm tea for the man. There was only one person in the entire Crimson City who had the right to call Yang Chendong's sixth brother, and that was the Yang family's seventh sister, Yang Duo. In actuality, she was the one who had said those words. She had first left the capital of Baiming with Yang Chendong, and had just gotten used to the climate and environment of the origin city. Then, because Qiao Yin was pregnant, she had taken a boat to Crimson City. Only after coming here did Yang Duo know what a great undertaking was. After coming here, Yang Duo often walked around with the madams and quickly understood the situation in Crimson City. In particular, she knew that in this city, although marriage required the blessings of the parents, it also depended on one's own will. This was what people called free love. Furthermore, the madams had all said that half of the women who came to Qian City had taken the initiative to divorce and pursue their own happiness. Although it was only 5%, in a place like Crimson City that was already filled with people, this was not a small proportion. This also made her think. She never thought that she would really meet such a man on the street. Speaking of which, it was quite a coincidence. She originally thought that the security of Crimson City would be very good, so when she came out, she refused to bring any guards and only brought a maid to accompany her. However, because she accidentally exposed her wealth, she was still targeted. Just as the thief was about to steal, he was discovered by a man who suddenly appeared and caught red-handed. Yang Duo was also sent to the nearby public security office as a witness. Only then did she know that the man's name was Long Tainan. What Yang Duo didn't expect was that this man who didn't even look 30 years old was already the second in command of Crimson City's public security department. Although he was ranked last, he was still considered a high-ranking official. This kind of age and this kind of official position, in the Great Ming Dynasty, was absolutely impossible to appear. Which important minister did not go through more than 10, or even decades of ups and downs in the officialdom? While Yang Duo was shocked, Long Tainan was even more shocked. He originally thought that this beautiful and intellectual woman would be a little panicked after knowing his identity. But who would have thought that she was so calm as if she didn't hear anything? It had to be said that Long Tainan could be considered to have seen countless people. Just when he was in the public security department, he didn't know how many people he had interacted with. Often, he could see a lot of things from the changes in other people's expressions. But when facing Yang Duo, he found that his tricks seemed to be useless. The two of them were curious about each other at the same time. This was not a good thing for men and women. Just like this, the more they wanted to understand each other, the more they knew. Slowly, they finally understood each other's situation. But at the same time, they found that they had already fallen in love with each other. In this matter, Yang Duo more or less felt inferior. After all, she was a divorced woman. Although it was a peaceful divorce, it definitely wouldn't be good if it was spread out. If Long Tainan was also divorced, it would be better, but this man was too perfect. He was almost 30 years old, but he had never been married. In his own words, he was poor in the past and couldn't get a wife. Later, Qiqian was owned by Yang Xie. As a native, he finally had a place to show his ability. He worked hard step by step to get to where he was today. After a lot of effort, he naturally didn't have time to pay too much attention to emotional issues, so he never got married. Yang Duo was not a little girl who would easily believe the words of others. For this matter, she also found the fifth madam, and conducted a deep investigation on Long Tainan through the CIA. But the final result was that this person was very innocent. He had never left Ryukyu Island since he was a child. Such a person would definitely not have any problems. After knowing that Long Tainan really didn't intend to get close to her, Yang Duo was relieved. This was mainly because she had been hurt in emotional issues and was really scared. But after a few years after giving her feelings wholeheartedly again, it was out of control and she couldn't extricate herself. Now the two had reached the point where they were separated by a layer of gauze. If it weren't for Yang Duo's noble status, Long Tainan was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself. He didn't reject the fact that young Duo had been married once, and it had nothing to do with her being the seventh sister of the sixth young master. In his own words, some feelings were there. He really liked young Duo. But even if the two sides already liked each other, they still didn't intend to make this relationship public. In young Duo's words, she didn't know what her sixth brother would think of this matter, especially now that there were rumors that the Ministry of Public Security was going to be restructured. The former part-time minister, Yang Wu, would also have to step down and give up this position. When the time came, the competitors would be selected from the 5 vice ministers. Even Long Tainan didn't dare to make his feelings public at this time. Those who didn't know would think that he wanted to use marriage as a way to make his career smoother. If that was the case, Long Tainan wasn't willing to bear the reputation of relying on a woman to get to the top. The two's thoughts were very simple. Once the new minister's matter was settled, they would make this matter public. At that time, no one would say that he was relying on a woman's power. As the last of the 5 vice ministers, Long Tianan's qualifications were the lowest. He had also been the vice minister for the shortest time, so he had never thought much about this position. The so-called no desire was probably referring to people like him. Although he didn't have any further thoughts, it didn't mean that Long Tainan wouldn't comment on what happened in the Ministry of Supervision. One of the 32 people who were put through labor was the assistant of the vice minister of the Ministry of Public Security. Because of this matter, everyone knew that the vice minister wouldn't have the chance to be promoted this time, just like Long Tainan. After all, if you can't even manage the people around you, how can you manage a large department? A man and a woman talked about the past and the present under the moon. It was late into the night when young Duo had to get up and return to the palace. After all, they weren't married yet. It wasn't good for a woman's reputation to spend the night outside. Although no one dared to control young Chendong's sister, she still had to be self-disciplined. "Let me send you off. It's not safe on the road." Seeing that young Duo was about to leave, Long Tainan said reluctantly, "It's fine. After what happened last time, I brought guards with me when I went out. They're all armed with guns. No one dares to provoke me." Young Duo smiled and left reluctantly. She was looking forward to their next meeting. In the palace, young Chendong was accompanying the 5th Madam, Su Man. Ever since the 2nd Madam, Xiao Yin, got pregnant, the other madams seemed to feel a sense of crisis. Since then, everyone counted their days. Once the time was right, they would invite young Chendong over. Regarding this, young Chendong could only feel that he was about to become a cedar. He couldn't complain about anything else. After all, each of his wives were outstanding beauties. As a man, what else could he complain about? Wouldn't that be a little inconsiderate? Tonight was the best time for Su Man to get pregnant and give birth. Young Chendong rushed over after having dinner with Xiao Yin. After a round of lovemaking, the two of them lay on the bed and hugged each other, not knowing when light footsteps came from outside. Then, without seeing anyone, a voice came in. "Madam, 7th sister has returned to the palace." "Okay, I understand." Su Man who was lying on the bed, replied. Then she buried her head in young Chendong's arms. You've worked hard." Young Chendong kissed Su Man's forehead. Then, as if he remembered something, he said, "Oh right, you said that you sent someone to investigate Long Tainan. How is it?" You're still talking about it? I wanted to talk to you about serious matters first." Who knew that I would forget everything once I saw him? Su Man complained coquettishly. But only the heavens knew that she had taken the initiative just now. With young Chendong's identity, they should be people from 2 different worlds. But not only did she become young Chendong's wife, she was also in charge of the huge Central Intelligence Agency. Just these were enough for her to be satisfied for the rest of her life. As for children, Su Man wanted one. But it wasn't to inherit the throne. She just wanted to leave behind a crystallization of their love, a witness, and a continuation of their lives. That was all. Young Chendong felt Su Man's thoughts. That was why he treated her so well. He tightened his arms and hugged her even tighter. He asked, "Tell me, what kind of person is this Long Tainan? You also know that my 7th sister was hurt emotionally once. I definitely won't let the same thing happen a second time. Chapter 906. Ever since Yang Duo came to Crimson City, the attention she received in the harem was no less than Yang Qindong's. After all, she was a member of the Yang family and the first person from the 6th Young Master's family to come to Crimson City. One could imagine how much importance she would receive, and how many women would curry favor with her. Everyone wanted to gain Yang Duo's friendship, so that they could integrate better into the Yang family. It was impossible to hide everything about Yang Duo. Not to mention, other than Tuoya and Su Maner, the other women knew Yang Duo before, and had a good relationship with her. Her husbands were well aware of Yang Duo's failed marriage. They even knew that Yang Qindong had beaten up his 7th brother-in-law the first time he had come to the capital. As the women giggled about their husband's tyrannical behavior, they were even more keenly aware of the close relationship between the 6th young master and his big sister. Otherwise, why would he not do anything else after coming to the capital and instead do this first thing? Yang Qindong's importance was the women's importance. Yang Duo's personal problems also became something that the women had to worry about. They even wanted to build a relationship with her. They knew that the 6th young master wouldn't object to such a thing. They didn't expect that she would have a relationship with a golden bachelor like Long Tainan. This phrase was personally said by Yang Qindong. He used it as an analogy to those young and promising men who were in high positions, but had yet to marry. Sometimes he would even pretend to be disappointed, and say that it was a pity that he already had several wives and couldn't be a golden bachelor. Therefore he attracted a lot of rolling eyes. Yang Duo actually found Long Tainan. Even if she didn't request for an investigation, the other madams wouldn't take it lightly. As such, some things about this person were quickly investigated. In the end, the CIA and the Security Bureau jointly announced that there was no problem with this person. Yang Qindong also knew that for an official to be able to become a vice minister, his background must have been investigated thoroughly. There was definitely no problem with Long Tainan. However, that was not what he was thinking about. He was thinking about what kind of thoughts this man had when he came into contact with his 7th sister. Did he really not know Yang Duo's background, or did he just like her? Furthermore, he clearly knew that she was his 7th elder sister, and took the initiative to befriend her. These were two completely different natures, which would ultimately lead to vastly different results. As Yang Qindong's wife, Su Maner naturally knew what he meant. Seeing that she had asked, he explained, "Our investigation shows that the two of them met purely by chance. It was the beginning of a hero saving a damsel in distress." At first, the two of them did not know each other's identities. Although 7th sister's identity was noble, because she had always been in the palace, not many people knew of her. Also, the thief who coveted 7th sister's money is still being punished and sentenced to 3 years in prison. From this result, we can basically rule out the possibility that it was man-made. According to our investigation, Long Tainan is a very prideful person. Back then, he had taken the earliest Lung Feng exam and even passed. However, considering that he was originally a local of Ryukyu Island, and that the local public security was also a big problem, they fought for his opinion to stay and work in the local area. I heard that in order to make him stay, the local officials even used prodding methods. The general idea was that even if he could be a good soldier, he might not be able to manage the local public security work. Under the provocation, as expected, he did not report to the military. Because of this, the military even fought a lawsuit with the local government for a while. Hehe. Hearing Su Maner's introduction, Yang Qindong did not smile at all. Instead, he snorted coldly. Immature. Su Maner ignored him. Men were like this. When the woman close to them was about to get married, it was as if they were about to lose something. Under such circumstances, it was very difficult to say that they would find other people pleasing to the eye. This was her husband throwing a tantrum in front of her, and also showing that he did not treat her as an outsider. Su Maner was happy in her heart and continued, "This person's ability is still quite good. He relied on his own hard work to climb up step by step. According to our investigation, during the work period, he did not have any close contact with any officials. Even Sir Yu Qian, who is in charge of a city, he only went to visit him once with his colleagues during the new year. This is already very rare among the cadres at the secondary level. Yes, he's not someone who wants to climb up to others. That's one point. Yang Chendong expressed his opinion once again. Hearing this, Su Maner, who was at the side, was amused. Husband, then your attitude means that you agree to this matter? It's still too early to say these things. We'll talk about it after I find a chance to meet him. Yang Chendong did not make a decision immediately. Instead, he wanted to observe. He even had a tentative plan in his heart. He wanted to see how this Long Tainan would solve the problem. No one knew what the two of them talked about next. However, on the second day, a piece of news began to spread in the Public Security Department. That was, the next department head had been chosen. Whoever it was would be announced when the time came. Once the news was out, the expressions of the other secondary managers who were still trying to pull strings and possibly taking up the position instantly turned ugly. Since it had already been decided, it was obviously too late for them to do anything else. In his own office, Long Tainan also heard about this matter from his assistant. However, he only smiled and accepted it. Originally, he did not want to be an official. As long as he could work hard, it was the same no matter who became the department head. Originally, he thought that the matter had been settled and everyone could put their minds on work. However, he did not expect that another piece of news would spread. It was said that considering that there were already 5 secondary managers in the Public Security Department, there were already too many of them. One of them had to be eliminated, and this person was very likely to be Long Tainan, who was at the bottom of the list. Once the news came out, the assistant hurriedly reported it, and then asked the leader to find someone to inquire about it. Long Tainan was not in a hurry. He thought that such a thing was impossible. It was true that he was at the bottom of the list, but he was also the youngest. He was also very capable. He did not think that this news was true. It was just a rumor. When was there ever a change in personnel that was not like this? However, Long Tainan did not take it seriously. He did not expect that the city lord mansion of Yuqian would spread the news that afternoon. It said that in this change of work, there would be 2 people who would no longer hold the position of secondary manager. They were the secondary manager of the Ministry of Supervision, Wu Qian, and the secondary manager of the Public Security Department, Long Tainan. The news came from the city lord mansion, so there was no need to doubt its accuracy. At this moment, Long Tainan was indeed a little flustered. He did not understand why this was happening. However, if it was because he was young, then why did they promote him to the position of secondary manager? Originally, he was working well down there. Wasn't this playing with him? Filled with confusion, Long Tainan returned to the mansion unhappily. Tonight, young duo came again. Originally, the two of them did not meet so often. After all, even if they were in a relationship, they had to pay attention to the influence, not to mention that the other party was the sister of the 6th young master. However, it was precisely because she heard about Long Tianan's matter that young duo felt that it was necessary for her to appear. When they met, she even bluntly asked what was going on. If needed, she could go and ask Yang Chendong. If this was said by someone else, it was very likely that they were bragging. However, who was young duo? She would do what she said. If she made up her mind, even if Yang Chendong was already resting, he would still have to dress up neatly and come out to welcome her. There's no need. On the other hand, the moment Long Tainan saw young duo, the gloominess on his face disappeared. I can't let one person take all the benefits. For me to be able to meet you is already a blessing from the heavens. As for my position as secondary manager, I'll just let it go. I'm still young anyway. As long as I have a job to do, it's fine. Not only did Long Tainan appear to be so open-minded, but he had also thought it through. He even thought that it was probably because the 6th young master knew about his and Yang Duo's matter. Considering the idea of avoiding relatives, he removed the position of secondary manager. However, at the same time, it also meant that he was already seriously considering his marriage with Yang Duo. Yang Duo was a smart person. No matter what, she still had the genes of the Yang family. She quickly understood the meaning of this sentence. Then her expression changed and she said shyly, "What are you talking about? Could it be that he already knows about our matter?" That's not strange. The sixth young master can find out about the entire Crimson City, and even the entire Ryukyu Island if he wants to. Long Tianan's expression became a lot more serious. From the bottom of his heart, he really respected Yang Chundong, who was younger than him. Originally, Yang Duo came aggressively, thinking that someone was trying to make things difficult for Long Tainan. What, did they think there was no one behind them? If someone really thought that, then she would use facts to tell them that their thinking was very wrong. However, after Long Tianan's persuasion, she knew that it was very likely that the result would be different. She was relieved. After a while, she forgot about the purpose of coming here, and changed it to the two of them talking about their hearts under the moonlight. One night passed. The next day, the city lord's mansion issued a decision in the form of a document. The two secondary managers, Wu Qian and Long Tainan, were removed from their positions. As for the new job, there was no mention of it. They were only told to have a good rest first. When the news came out, there was an uproar. Long Tainan was young. Being able to become a secondary manager did attract some envy, and even jealousy. However, it was already very difficult for him to become a minister. This time, he was not selected and did not even become a secondary manager. No one was surprised. However, some people said strange things. They said that Long Tainan used connections to attract the anger of the higher-ups and so on. In short, they were all derogatory words. They were just adding insult to injury. However, Wu Qian's matter attracted a lot of controversy. Chapter 907. Previously, Wu Qian's assistant and family members had indeed made mistakes, but Vice Minister Wu himself had not done anything wrong. Not only that, his performance in this matter was not bad. He acted swiftly and decisively, and once again displayed his impartial side. At that time, it really caused many people to praise him. But now, it seemed that a problem was a problem. Even if you made up for it well afterwards, you still could not erase the fact that you had made a mistake. Wu Qian's residence, which had very few friends because he was too principled, became even more deserted at this moment. There was almost no one who came to visit him. This matter also caused many officials with integrity to be disappointed. If even Wu Qian had such an outcome, then would they still dare to follow in his footsteps in the future? Were they not afraid of becoming the second Wu Qian? The entire Crimson City's official system was turbulent because of this, and the atmosphere was even somewhat oppressive. Some righteous people could not help but feel sad. Some people who were seeking personal gain were also intimidated by the 8 death sentences, and the sentence of the 32 labor camp members. They became cautious and did not dare to act rashly. It gave people the feeling that they could not do anything even if they had done something. Then what should they do? As one of the people involved in this matter, Wu Qian was leisurely staying at home. This was not just a saying, it was really leisurely. As the saying goes, without an official position, one's body would be light. The days in the Ministry of Supervision were very busy. Now that he had time to rest, he could sleep early and wake up late. He also seemed to be fatter than before. After being removed from his position, the house was not taken back. Wu Qian also peacefully stayed at home. When he had nothing to do, he would practice martial arts in the courtyard to train his body. When he was hungry, he would cook for himself. It was quite carefree. But this carefree life was quickly disrupted. On the 10th day of Wu Qian's idle prose, the gatekeeper suddenly appeared with a panicked expression. Wu Qian's face flashed with dissatisfaction towards this old man who had followed him for a few years, and yet was still so unsettled in the face of trouble. A person without determination was destined to not be able to achieve great things. However, Wu Qian did not have the habit of scolding his subordinates. This dissatisfaction quickly disappeared and he asked, "What happened? Did someone come to take back the house?" Since he was removed from his position, in Wu Qian's opinion, it was only a matter of time before the house was taken back. Although he loved his current job, who asked him to be the one who did not know how to judge people? Based on the mistakes made by the people around him, it was reasonable for him to be implicated, and even be removed from his position. At worst, he could just go home and farm. Wasn't that what most people did? There was nothing wrong with it. No, no, master. The old gatekeeper shook his head repeatedly. Who is that? Could it be that someone is here to capture me? Sigh. Wu Qian shook his head as he spoke. This was the worst outcome he could think of. Although he didn't think that he had done anything wrong, there were some things that weren't right just because you didn't think they were wrong. He had vaguely heard that the sixth young master attached great importance to the matter of his assistant, Xie Kuan. If that was the case, then it was very likely that he would be caught as an example. Perhaps he was really unlucky. Master, no, it's sixth madam. Seeing that his master had guessed wrongly again and again, the old gatekeeper was so anxious that he blurted out what had caused him to be so flustered. What? At this moment, Wu Qian's expression changed again. He had already forgotten that he had just said that the old gatekeeper wasn't calm. He was able to become the vice minister of the Ministry of Supervision today, because of the sixth madam's efforts and words. He was very grateful in his heart. Even when something happened this time, someone had tactfully reminded him that he should complain to the sixth madam, but he didn't listen to the advice. In his opinion, the sixth madam had already spoken for him. He was the one who didn't know the right person. How could he still have the face to look for the sixth madam? Therefore, if Wu Qian were to see who he was most afraid of, the sixth madam would definitely be on the list, and she was ranked at the top. It was just that if you didn't look for others, but others insisted on looking for you, how could you stop and refuse? When he heard that the sixth madam had condescended to come to his residence, Wu Qian instinctively tidied his clothes, then quickly got up and walked out of the courtyard. Without waiting for Wu Qian to go out and welcome her, a group of female soldiers appeared first. They were almost the same height. After wearing the same green military uniform, they looked as if they were carved from the same mold, valiant and formidable. Their eyes were like eagles as they scanned the surroundings. Among them, the sixth madam, Luan Xiaoyu, was walking in the middle. To be specific, Luan Xiaoyu hadn't married the sixth young master yet. She was already 17 years old this year, but there was still a year before the legal age of marriage in Crimson Nest City. Since the law was set by the sixth young master himself, he naturally had to abide by it. Although the wedding banquet hadn't been held, everyone had already started to call her the sixth madam. Luan Xiaoyu didn't reject this. Perhaps she really liked this form of address. When Luan Xiaoyu appeared, Wu Qian immediately knelt on the ground and said, "Sinner Wu Qian greets the sixth madam. Get up." Luan Xiaoyu looked at Wu Qian and found that he didn't look dispirited because he was idle at home. He seemed to be in good spirits. She smiled and said, "Lord Wu seems to be in good spirits. It seems that you have rested well." "Thank you for your concern, sixth madam. Everything is well with Wu Qian." Wu Qian stood up and cupped his hands. "Oh, is it true? Could it be that you are happy now that you have been removed from your position? Is it because you have never thought of working for Yang Xie? Or are you lying to me?" Although Luan Xiaoyu was only 17 years old, she had already been training for a few years. The way she spoke and treated people was naturally not something an ordinary girl could compare to. Even when facing Wu Qian, when she said these words, she similarly felt a sudden pressure, giving people a lot of pressure. I don't dare. Wu Qian hurriedly shook his head. Sinner knows that he is guilty. It is only right that I be removed from my position. Everything is Qian's fault, so I will not be dissatisfied. Wu Qian's reaction was very fast. However, after he finished speaking, a voice suddenly sounded. "Do you not know how to, or do you not dare?" A man's voice suddenly sounded. Wu Qian looked in the direction of the voice and saw a row of male soldiers appear behind the female soldiers. They were all wearing black armor. Even their faces were completely covered by the armor. Only pairs of spirited eyes and nostrils that were used for breathing could be seen. It was unavoidably intimidating. When this formation appeared, Wu Qian's eyes flashed with shock. He immediately knelt down again and said with a panicked expression, "Sinner greets the sixth young master." "Oh, your reaction is not bad. You guessed that the young master is here so quickly. However, you still haven't answered my question." As the voice sounded for the second time, Yang Chendong appeared in front of Wu Qian. He was still dressed in green, and his face had not changed much compared to a few years ago. The only change was that there was an additional aura of a superior on his body. Yes, Sinner does not know how to, but also does not dare. Wu Qian knew that playing tricks in front of Yang Chendong was a joke, so he spoke the truth. This answer is honest. All right, you can't expect me and Madam to stand in your courtyard. Are you so poor that you don't even have tea? Yang Chendong was quite satisfied with this answer. If Wu Qian had only said that he did not know how to, he would have turned around and walked out. Yes, please enter the main room. Sinner will lead the way. Wu Qian's mind was still blank. He did not understand why the sixth young master and Luan Xiaoyu would come to his residence when he had been removed from his position. What was going on? With a myriad of thoughts in his mind, Wu Qian led the way while pondering the reason. Yang Chendong, who was behind him, also walked at a moderate pace. He looked around from time to time and nodded occasionally. It could be seen that Wu Qian was really poor. Normally, as the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Supervision, Wu Qian's monthly salary should not be a small amount. At least, it should not be a problem for him to support his family. However, both his concubine and assistant had met with mishap, and they had spent quite a lot of money using their authority. He had used his many years of savings to make up for the deficit. Even so, he was still short of a sum of money. Wu Qian, who had no savings, dismissed most of the servants in his house. Other than a gatekeeper, there was only a cook. One was for his face and the other was for his heart. They were both inseparable. This was also the reason why Yang Chendong only saw a gatekeeper and a servant when he entered the Wu residence. In the main hall, Wu Qian personally brewed tea and served it to Yang Chendong and Luan Xiaoyu. Then he stood to the side and bowed, as if he was listening to instructions. All right, since this is your residence, it is not good for us to usurp the role of host. Take a seat. Ever since Yang Chendong appeared, he had completely occupied the dominant position. He did not look like a guest at all. Yes. Wu Qian hurriedly agreed. The sixth young master had asked him to take a seat. If he did not take a seat, it would mean that he was not giving face to the sixth young master. This was also a crime that he could not bear. Wu Qian's but had just touched the chair when Yang Chendong's voice rang out beside him. He had no choice but to stand up again and return respectfully. How are your reflections at home these past few days? Replying to the sixth young master, Wu Qian knows that his sins are grave. No matter how you punish me, I will plead guilty. It can't be considered a grave sin. It is just that you did not know how to judge a person. You can still be saved. However, one must learn from the president's teachings. Mistakes can be made, but the same mistake must not be made again. Do you understand? Yang Chendong was very satisfied with Wu Qian's attitude. If the other party thought that he was not in the wrong and continued to be stubborn, then this person could not be used. Yang Chendong had always believed that honest officials were not equal to capable officials. There were many honest officials who were not as useful as capable corrupt officials. At least corrupt officials knew how to do things and make money by taking advantage of the situation. However, some honest officials did not do anything. They only did things half-heartedly. Sometimes such people would spoil things. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.